morning. And so good morning, everyone. Good morning. The month of July is the National Disaster Resilience Month, and today, Central Philippine University joins in the observance of the month-long celebration through this convocation, a lecture workshop with the theme, Central Spirit Forging Ways and Synergies Towards Disaster Resilience for a disaster-resilient university and community. And this is a collaborative project of the CPU Board of Trustees, Central Philippine University, and the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. And we are streaming live on Facebook via the CPU TV channel page and on YouTube at CPU TV programs. And to begin our program, may I request everyone to please rise as I call upon Pastor Neva Grace Fabila, the CPU Associate Pastor for Campus Ministry, to lead us in our opening prayer. And please remain standing after for the singing of our national anthem.
Let us bow down our head in prayer. Loving God and merciful Father, we come before you with reverence in your name. We thank you for this new day. We thank you for the rest and restoration, and even for fresh and new beginnings you have for us today. You are our protector and you are our shield. Today, we are gathered for this resiliency program, and we are grateful that such conversation is being discussed. We pray that you lead our speakers with your wisdom, that they may impart knowledge and information necessary for us and the persons present today to become resilient. Make this gathering of concerned individuals be fruitful and productive, that by the end of this discussion, resolution to disaster resilience will be made concrete and manifested in our university and in our community. Open the hearts of each participant to joyfully and willingly interact and share their knowledge for the good of your creation, the humanity, the earth, and everything in it. We ask in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son. Amen.
You may now all be seated. Thank you. Once again, a chilly and rainy but disaster-ready good morning to all of us resilient Centralians and resilient Filipino people. As mentioned earlier, we are observing this July, the 36th National Disaster Resilience Month with the theme, Bantayog ng Katatagan at ang Pagbubuklod sa Layuning Kahandaan, or in English, Pillar of Resilience and Uniting for Preparedness. O kung sa aton nga pulong, kag sa pagdihon nakon, ang buot silingon, amo ang haligi sang kapag-on kag paghugpong para sa kahandaan naton, which focuses on resiliently and the boundless adherence to the goal of preparedness. And so question, sino sa inyo diri wala pa naka-experience baha, bagyo, linog, landslide, sunog, kag paglupok sang bulkan, abi bayaw ang kamot? Bayaw ang kamot? Wala. Correct. Because kung may ara diri nga wala sina maka-experience, hindi ka taga Pilipinas. Why? Because according to the most recent data from the World Risk Index, Philippines is topmost and number one for the most natural disaster-prone, disaster-risk country in the whole world, followed by Indonesia and India, which underscores the importance of this activity today and the value of your coming here. And so let me now acknowledge our participants and everyone here in attendance. And can you please stand up and maybe wave your hand to be recognized once mentioned. And so starting with the CPU personnel, the CPU Incident Management Committee members, where are you? Ara, okay. From the National Service Training Program, NSTP, mga personnel natin from NSTP, Ara, madamo sila. From the Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC, yes, present. From the CPU Republic and our LGU representatives, mga students natin. From the Department of Languages, Mass Communication and Humanities, and senior high school faculty members. Yes, ari diri. And we have our resource persons and speakers who will be formally introduced later. And we also have our guests, visitors, and friends. And of course, our CPU administrators. And so I see our VP for Administration, Engineer Danny C. Molina. And yes, we are grateful for the presence of our CPU President, Dr. Ernest Howard B. Dagohoy, who will now be giving his greetings and welcome remarks to everyone.
Salamat, Gid, Engineer Bernie. And by the way, Engineer Bernie is the Director, Coordinator of our Packaging Technology Department here at the College of Engineering. Maayong aga, Gid, sa inyo nga tanan. Sino diring kabugtaw na? Sino diring katulog pa? Maulan noon, kag maayong aga sa inyo nga tanan. I bring greetings on behalf of your Central Philippine University Administration on this rainy day. And I welcome you to the first ever Disaster Resilient Lecture Workshop here in our campus, jointly undertaken by the CPU Board of Trustees, Central Philippine University, and the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. As Engineer Cangrejos already mentioned, July has been designated as the National Disaster Resilience Month, and as we observe the theme, Bantayog ng katatagan at ang pagbubuklod sa layuning kahandaan, I hope that we will take the key principles of national disaster resilience to heart so we can better anticipate disasters, plan to reduce disaster losses, and more importantly, empower individuals, organizations, and communities to act for themselves and others for the safety and well-being of everyone. I'm grateful to the organizers, our Vice President for Administration, Danny Molina, Vice Admiral Alexander Pama, Attorney Dory Del Losanias, Honorable Matt Palabrica, and Mrs. Donna Magno, to our expert resource speakers from the Academe, Professor Jessica Daro Bersilia, our government and private sectors, and to all of you, mga estudyante naton, mga staff sa CPU, for making this event possible. You see, this is just the beginning of what will become as a continuing venture, especially for us here at Central Philippine University. Our goal is for this university to eventually serve as a center of excellence in disaster resilience in the near future, in partnership with academic, government, and private institutions for the benefit of the communities around us and the welfare of our country as a whole. Let me close with these words found in Psalm chapter 24, verses 1 and 2, which attribute the design of this earth we call home to our Creator God. And the psalmist writes these words: "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For He founded it on the seas and established it on the waters." Salamat gid, maayong aga sa inyong tanan, kabay pang hindi ka mo mabasa pagwa ninyo after this lecture workshop. Thank you.
CPU as a center of disaster resiliency and taking to heart the key principles of disaster preparedness and resiliency. Thank you, Dr. Dagohoy. At this time, we will listen to the rationale of the program from a renowned expert in disaster risk reduction management and resilience. But first, let me tell you why his mere presence here makes this a truly legit affair. Formerly, he was the executive director of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council and also the administrator of the Office of Civil Defense, and thus was greatly involved in government and multi-sectoral efforts in disaster risk reduction and management and resilience. He initiated and institutionalized the pre-disaster risk assessment action programs and protocols, a system that has improved the country's approach to disaster risk reduction and has significantly reduced casualties and damages from disasters. Currently, he is the co-chair of the board of directors for Arise Philippines and member of the Global Arise Network's board of directors. Arise, by the way, is a private sector alliance for disaster risk reduction. He is concurrently a consultant for the National Resilience Council and for the disaster resilience of SM Prime Holdings Incorporated, as well as a board member of the Oscar M. Lopez Center, an NGO that helps support for research and innovative solutions towards climate change adaptation and disaster risk management. He is also an adjunct professor of the AIM, Asian Institute of Management's Executive Master in Disaster and Crisis Management, and a lecturer of the Ateneo de Manila University's Master in Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience. A retired Vice Admiral of the Armed Forces of the Philippines who served as the 32nd Flag Officer in command of the Philippine Navy, and with all his many other titles and accomplishments, we are greatly honored and proud to have him here with us today. Chairman of the Sustainability and Resilience Committee and member of the CPU Board of Trustees, Vice Admiral Alexander Patino Pama, to give the program rationale. Sir?
Damo, wait nga salamat, engineer. Abi ko to, nag-geology na si engineer. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much for that very, very kind introduction. And siguro base mas malaba pang introduction ni engineer kaysa speech na ang akong remarks subong. Anyway, I just would like to highlight from among those, I don't know if you call it credentials or a background that the engineers mentioned about me. One important thing he missed is that I am an alumnus of Central Philippine University. I graduated from CPU in why pa mo mabata inyo 1973 high school, and from there I had other things to do. But today I'm equally proud to be here wearing the hat of an alumnus who cares for the university and the community where we are staying in one of the most important and critical issues of the day, which is climate change and disaster resilience. So I took it upon myself in the Board of Trustees to push the envelope on this agenda. And sa kakakulit ko, the chairman of the Board of Trustees Kaya balbala kong sige ka wakal sa isa ka bagay, ihatagin na sa imo para ikaw maobra. So that's where I ended up. So before I proceed, in spite of the introductions already, let just me acknowledge, of course, and thank the presence of the President of the University, President Ernest Dagohoy, who I thought I was going to make kulit for this agenda, and it turns out to be the other way around. Ako na ginakulit sa subong kung ano himuunta in so far as disaster resilience and climate change in CPU. And I find it very, very lucky and good. And it's something whose time is definitely come that we have to do something. So, without also spending much time, anyway, introduce mo na siya maayo karon ang atong speaker. I'd like to thank Professor Jack Bersilia, one of the renowned experts in what she's going to talk about later on. Hindi lang diri sa Iloilo, nationally, but even internationally. Hambal mo na sa aton karon kung sino si Professor Jack. And by the way, she just came back from Manila yesterday to be with us today. And karon sa hapon, malupad naman siya pabalik sa Manila. Kaya makadto na naman siya sa Marawi para matudlo man dito about disaster resilience. So with that, I also thank SP Matt, ang parente ko, kag sparring partner sa Board of Trustees, for being here with us. Pero siya na karon ng ma-ending. Let me, of course, I won't start this talk without acknowledging the big support and help without whom this activity will not materialize. And I refer to VP Engineer Dan Molina. Let's give him a big hand. So on that point, allow me to read ang ginsulat-sulat ko na kaya hindi na ako katulog kagabi, isang ulan. Pila ka beses ko nagbulubog ta ahli ko, isulat ko na lang ihambal ko boss para hindi ko malipatan. So anyway, I would like to start in saying by quoting the central spirit. This has been talked so often, and allow me to quote one of the editors of. We had that book, diba? The book We Care, We Are CPU. I don't know if you've read about that, and where one of the editors referred to central spirit, and I quote. The central spirit strongly encourages us to keep faith, to be a moral person, to be fair, and take note, to be a good steward of the creation of God, and to excel in all our undertakings. We talk of climate change, we talk of disaster. A significant part of that is due to the creation of God. And we want to do something about it in the spirit, in our central spirit. That's why ang aton nga theme, when they ask me anong theme ayo man, sabi ko, let's have something, the central spirit, forging ways and synergies towards disaster resilience. When we talk of disasters, I was saying, we only do things na kaya nating gawin, ang masarangan tahimuon. But at the end of the day, the final arbiter is still the Creator on what has to be done. All they can do. That's why ginahambal nato ang theme natin disaster risk reduction. We can only reduce. We cannot erase disasters. Everything is left to somebody up there. So it's in the line of our central spirit that we have to push the envelope sa hambalgan is Tagalog sa abot ng ating makakaya. And as we say, relative to that, we focus on to be a good steward of God and to excel, and I quote, and that a centralian can be a bridge to community and strengthen linkages for the betterment of society. And that's why we are here today. What we do today is to be precisely in pursuit of the central spirit in the context of strengthening the linkage and bridging our CPU community with the city government, the local community where we are situated, and the society in general in pursuit of addressing a compelling issue and reality that poses a clear and present danger to all of us. I am referring to the issue of the detrimental effects of climate change and disaster risks that comes with it. Today, we come together with the city government, ably represented by the City Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office, led by Ms. Donna Magno, and the representatives of the barangays who are here present, to initiate and pursue efforts to forge ways towards disaster risk reduction and resilience here in CPU, in our surrounding communities, and consequently in our respective homes, communities, and areas and spheres of influence. When we go home and we are outside CPU, the value of your influence in your respective communities cannot be measured. Sigurado gid na ya, ma-impluwensyahan ninyong inyong mga pamilya, kag ang inyong mga kilala, para ma-share man naton ang aton na balaan parte sa disaster risk reduction. We now live in a time and place where the effects of climate change and the risks it brings and pose a clear and present danger to us in terms of loss of lives, properties, and livelihoods. It is verified fact, given that we, the Philippines, as was mentioned earlier, is number 1 insofar as the World Risk Index report. Daw SM, malakita mo. I'm sure of you, SM, no? Ang amon, ma-plug lang ko jutay, ang amon ba lang ang mga malls, ang amang SM itself, we have a motto. And kita, no, the Philippines, so far as disaster is concerned, we just like SM, we have it all. We have typhoons, earthquakes, bagyo, and anything that you, and not to mention, natural hazards pa lang, not to mention the human-induced hazards, in which case I'm sure Professor Jack will be talking about when she goes to Marawi tomorrow. This is alarming, to say the least, that needs a whole-of-society approach now more than ever. And this is why, primarily, why here today. Iloilo Province and City, just like a number of other places in the Philippines, has its own share of disaster risk factors, putting it in, quote-unquote, the line of fire, so to speak, relative to natural and human-induced hazards. As our esteemed speaker or lecturer, Professor Jack Bercilla, Dr. Bercilla, this morning will elaborate on. It is in this context, therefore, that given the added knowledge and understanding we shall acquire today from our speakers, that we will, 1, be understanding better the disaster risks confronting us, 2, what our city Dream O is doing to prevent, mitigate, reduce these risks, and prepare and respond and recover from whatever disasters would come our way, and 3, what we in CPU currently have to address this, our existing plans and protocols to address these risks. Ready na gid na si VP dan ma-share karon. We intend to further strengthen our capacities here in CPU in collaboration with the city government and the relevant barangays in our community and other stakeholders in order to optimize our capability to ensure a disaster-resilient Central Philippine University, as well as becoming a reliable partner and force multiplier in its continuing effort to make Iloilo a city and safe and livable place. On the aside, I was just texting and talking to Mayor Treñas last night, and I was briefing him on what we will be doing today. And I said, "Oy, gintugan ko na ang NSTP, kag-ROTC, and ang mga estudyante." And I said, when we come to a point that we will become masters insofar as disaster resilience is concerned, we, CPU, will definitely be a force multiplier insofar as our disaster resilience efforts, not only for the city, but for the province itself. Gatangga ang si SP Matt, kaya linga si sunod tagid ang probinsya sini. Anyway, these efforts that we are doing today will not stop here, as mentioned by President Dagohoy earlier. In fact, that's already a marching order from no less than the President. We want to go further. In my discussions with President Dagohoy, we were one and the same in thinking that we shall endeavor to continue moving forward beyond today to leverage on the existing knowledge, skills, and expertise of the CPU community to be able to develop and eventually achieve a goal of making CPU, as he also mentioned earlier, a center of excellence in the field of climate change and resilience. This is a dream for all of us. But as we all know, dreams, however, start with the speck of an idea and the first step. And today, we make the first step. Madamo gid nga salamat sa inyong tanan.
Madamo gid nga salamat, Sir Alexander Pama, CPU High School alumnus, and the pride of Pasig City. Let me, by the way, acknowledge as well, I forgot to acknowledge earlier, the presence and the attendance of the personnel from the City Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office, and also the representatives of the neighboring barangays around the Central Philippine University. Yes, nakita ko sila, ma'ams. And so thank you for coming. And so we now proceed to our lecture proper. And so let me now introduce our two guest lecturers this morning. Our first guest lecturer is Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia of the University of the Philippines, Visayas, and she will talk about the Iloilo Province and City Disaster Risk Profile, the hazards, exposure, and vulnerability. Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia served in the University of the Philippines in the Visayas as a member of the faculty working on development and policy studies for over a decade before working with partnerships aimed at addressing root causes of poverty and policy research and advocacy work in the Philippines and Asia and the Middle East with Christian Aid, an international development NGO where she served as senior advocacy and policy officer. As part of the global climate change advocacy team of ACT Alliance, a coming together of over 130 faith-based groups globally, she embarked on ensuring spaces of articulation for community-based policy concerns in national, regional, and global decision-making platforms. She trained and worked on interdisciplinary approaches on island sustainability, livelihood equity, work for International Resource Development Center, Dalhousie University, University of the Philippines, Visayas, University of West Indies, and Hasanuddin University. She has also worked with the Ateneo School of Government and Manila Observatory to develop approaches and strengthen science policy practice for risk governance. She has worked with various stakeholders and on pre- and post-disaster risk prevention, preparedness, recovery, rehabilitation work, climate-smart disaster risk management approaches, and evidence-based risk communication in pursuit of climate action and resilience at various layers of governance. She provided technical support in the crafting of the Philippine policies on disaster risk reduction and climate change, National Disaster Preparedness Plan, and other local development and derivative plans, and also in the implementation of the National Resilience Scorecard, Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment, and many more. Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia has contributed to and continues to engage in developing transdisciplinary climate and disaster resilience approaches and other development challenges with the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines project, the National Resilience Council, Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center, and various local, national, international, non-government organizations and local and national governments and regional platforms. Co-beneficial ecosystems and nature-based approaches is a field of work she is currently engaged in as an approach to risk and development governance in multiple applications. She is currently a returning faculty and assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, Visayas, under the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences Institute of Fisheries Policy Development Studies. Oh, and by the way, let me cite my sources of information. That would be from the Annual Conference on Environmental Science, ACES 2022, and the website of Parabukas, an environmental consulting firm where she is a senior fellow. Our first guest lecturer, Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia. Our second guest lecturer, a big round of applause please for Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia. Our second guest lecturer is Ms. Donna P. Magno, head of the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office, and she will speak about the Iloilo City National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Programs and Activities. Ma'am Donna Magno is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Management, University of the Philippines, Visayas, Certificate of Professional Education, UP Diliman, and Master in Crisis and Disaster Risk Management, Philippine Public Safety College. She has more than 10 years of volunteer and community development work in Mindanao and has worked with Kids for Peace Foundation, National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, USAID, Growth with Equity in Mindanao, Ugnayan ng Pahinungod or the Oblation Corps, UP Visayas, which is a volunteer teacher service organization of the University of the Philippines. She worked as a technical staff and training specialist at the Office of Civil Defense 6 and handled the implementation of the special projects on disaster risk reduction and management, which focused on strengthening the capacities of the disaster risk reduction management networks of the local level. She also served as a project coordinator of community-based adaptation and resilience against disasters project supported by the CityNet Yokohama Project Office of Japan, intended to devise effective community-level adaptation and resiliency schemes in the city of Iloilo and increase awareness of citizens on disaster preparedness and prevention and mitigation in the event of a disaster, particularly in relation to floods. Presently, Ma'am Donna Magno, as head of the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office, is involved in community-based disaster risk reduction work in the city of Iloilo, responsible for setting the direction, development, and implementation and coordination of disaster risk management programs in the city through the guidance of the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Our second guest lecturer, Ms. Donna P. Magno. So let me call on now our first guest lecturer to talk about the Iloilo Province and City Disaster Risk Profile, Hazards, Exposure, and Vulnerability, Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia. Idugunta lang para makal. Again, our first lecturer to talk about the Iloilo Province and City Disaster Risk Profile, Professor Jessica Dator Bercilia. Ma'am?
Thank you very much, sir. First and foremost, I am just citizen Jessica Dator Bercilia. I'm no longer a full-time faculty of the University of the Philippines in the Visayas because I have a disability, so I have to cut down on the scale of engagements that I've had. But I still do lecture at the University of the Philippines and all the other what said. So thank you very much for the generous introduction. But I am here today. I was first wondering why I was given the task, no, by by Admiral Pama and Donna to discuss the risk profile of the city and the province, because it would have been ideal if it would be discussed by both the city and the province. But I get it, because we need to understand also the context now of why we have disaster risk. You might be wondering why I have a table in front of me. I have a bit of a disability, so I will have to sit down in a little while. But I do hope that you take time to really listen to what I'm going to present and to take note of what's presented in the board. I am not a physical scientist, just to put that on record, but my work was really on development. My task is on a different scale, much like the passion of Admiral Pama. I really wanted to serve the Philippines. I have this motto in life. I don't want to end the national anthem in "ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo." I resisted that. I've always said, "ang mabuhay ng dahil sa'yo." No? And when I went into international development work, particularly in disaster risk reduction, I realized that if I wanted to help save a community, let's say from flooding, no, ari diri ang taga-barangay Sambag, no? Kung gusto ko gali, no, nga makabulig sa isa komunidad para hindi sila malumos, I have to do something more. And what is it? And this is where CPU, no, can really help. I never realized that to help save a community from flooding, I needed to understand what the volume of rainfall was. I needed to understand what the velocity of the water coming down from the mountain is. I needed to understand the depth, of the rivers, no, and even the shape of the rivers, no. And I am not very good in math and science. I never failed a subject, but I love science and math, but my brain was not made up for it. I really thought, I wasn't ready for it. So for the past decades of this work, I have learned from the best Filipino scientists, no, thanks to Manila Observatory, and they were very patient with me, because if I wanted communities to understand what they're up against, I needed to understand it first. Hindi ko na siya maeksplikara sa ila, nga kung hindi ka dira maghalin sa imo nga ginaistaran, kinahanglan mas madasig ka magdalagan sa tubig nga garagasa papanaog. That was our experience in Frank here, no? Hindi ka mo da maghalin, ano ka kadasig magdalagan? Ano kadasig na naog ang tubig halin sa bukid? Kung hindi ka da maghalin, kinahanglan mas madasig ka magdalagan kaysa sa tubig nga nagapanaog sa bukid, no? As simple as that, no? And but to do that, when we talk about risk, no, disaster risk, the basic science that has been agreed upon by scientists, no, and the policy community in the world is that we need to better sharpen our understanding of risk, no? In fact, the UN Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction has that first, no, strategic goal, no, and that is understanding of risk. Amo ini ang isa ka bagay nga wala maintindihan sang madamo, bisan sa nagawali na sang disaster resilience. Okay? And what does science say? Risk is a confluence of 3 factors: your hazard, your exposure, and your vulnerability. In our language, ano ang hazard? Sa Hiligaynon. Sa Hiligaynon, simbambalaan niya na kay ang taga-Sambag. Ano ang hazard? Ano? Katalagman. Bongga gidya. si President, katalagman. It's a very unique term, no? Ang Ilonggo, yan may ara siya specific term. That means it's in our consciousness, no? Balaan mong katalagman. Ano ang exposure? None. Kay mga Inglesero, kamo kag Inglesera, no? If we want to help communities, we need to understand what is it in our language. Ano ang exposure? Ano? Nagauba? Amo na, sir. Kahayag. Kahayag, no? Amo na, no? Sa oblations ng UP, no? Hayag, ikaw. Last, ano ang vulnerability? Nasakitan ka, ano? Ang mga kabataan ni daw tungang gabi ni sila, kahit puro na lang sila English, abi ang mga student council. Kaya mga alam mo ni sila. Ano ang, may kita ko to kagina, Department of Languages, may, di ba, may nagambal ka mo? Kagina, may, di ang Department of Languages ta. Ano ang vulnerability sa hiligay nun? I-text. Any idea? Kung vulnerable ka, ano ka? Apektado ka? Okay. Ano pagid? Hambali, Admiral Pama, hindi ka nakaroon matapos 30 minutes. Ano? Si Sir, may term ka mo sina? Kahuyang. Dahiligay non-term is kahuyang, liwat. No? Kung mahalin ka mo diri, nga amo lang na matandaan nyo, lipay na ako. Ano ang hazard? Ano ang exposure? Ano ang vulnerability? Kahuyang. So, ang risgo o peligro na ginatawag naton, no, or the risk, is a confluence of those three: hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Amo na ang risk. Kung may makita ka mga datos nga ang ginapakita niya lang ang hazard, kag ang lugar nga exposed sa hazard, hindi ina risk analysis. Kay waay siya sang analysis sang kahuyang. Okay? I apologize if I don't speak in English completely, because I believe that it is best to communicate also in our own language, no? Not that I cannot speak in English straight, no? But I really want to make sure that we understand this concept. Now, currently, we also have, this phenomenon that Admiral Pama says we have it all. Yes. But the problem with the hazards in the Philippines is that they're like Filipinos. You know why? You know why? What makes you, when you think about Filipinos, what characteristic is that which you identify with Filipinos? Ha? Good? Resilient? Ordinary lives. When you think about Filipinos, what distinguishes Filipinos from others? When you travel, ha? Ano? Hospitable, no? Filipinos like to be in the company of others. No? When you go to other countries, they like to eat alone, they have dinner alone. But kita ya mahilig magbarkada. And the hazards in the Philippines, that come to the Philippines, palabarkada sila. They do not come one at a time. They normally come as a pair or as a group. Just right now, we're sandwiched by 2 low pressure areas. No, threatening to be, tropical cyclones. Amo na iya. May ara pa na kung nga earthquake, dason may baskog na ulan, no? And so they do come together, no? So this is the phenomenon called as a compound risk, no? When you have multiple hazards coming together, multiple exposures, coming together, and then multiple vulnerabilities making the matters worse. Now, Sir earlier talked about the World Risk Index, no? And the World Risk Index, as you may know, yes, true enough, no, it did cover natural hazards, but you see, Currently, science is telling us that our cyclones, coastal flooding, our riverine floodings, our drought, our sea level rise are not purely natural hazards. They are anthropogenic also in nature, meaning they are human-induced. No? So I was telling the President that while we're talking about the disasters here, no, we're talking about the hazards here, we are also causing it. No? Why? Because we're using air conditioning units. The air conditioning units, if they're old, they could still contain either chlorofluorocarbons or hydrofluorocarbons. Hydrofluorocarbons have 11,000 times, more global warming potential than your ordinary cars outside, no? So please do come to think of it. I normally talk about this, no, when I move around. But you see, in the measure of the World Risk Index, we talk about the different hazards, but we talk also about vulnerability. In this case, vulnerability is unpacked, no? Ginhimay-himay siya, and they talk about vulnerability in terms of lack of adaptive capacity, lack of coping capacity, and susceptibility. No? So meaning, when you see a disaster happening, kung nagakatabo ang disaster, hindi lang na siya tungod sa hazard. Hindi lang na siya tungod sa mabaskog ang ulan. Hindi lang na siya tungod sa earthquake. Okay? Why? It is because of your level of exposure and your vulnerability. So for instance, you have a very strong typhoon, Category 5 typhoon, crossing an island in the Visayas. No? Kung wala na tao, nubo-nubo imo risk level, kay wala sang exposed population. Do you understand that? Okay? So imagine how much risk level would we have if Haiyan passed the city of Iloilo? No? Particularly the coastal zones, no? Because there are too many exposed elements, no? But you see, your exposure and the hazards are not the only factors that lead to disasters. Okay? Very important factor there is what they call vulnerability o kahuyang, no? Kahuyang, no? Which means if you are living in a coastal area, no? Ma'am Donna was not about to come here because she now has to address the whole issue of 56 houses that were destroyed by storm surges, no? Why were they destroyed? Because you have a very strong storm surge. There were many houses and populations exposed in coastal areas, plus mahuyang. Hindi lang ang panimalay, that's why they were destroyed. If they were sturdy, biskan hampason siya sang dako nga bagyo, hindi siya maguba, no? Pero may isa pagid kakahuyang, no? Kabila mo tig-aman ulo sa mga tao, hindi sila maghalin, no? And that too is vulnerability. Now, in 2022, okay, we were also at the top. In 2023, when the report came in, though this was a 2023 report, no, we were also number 1, no? The report is on the year 2022, but it came out late 2023. Please look at the, kita nyo sa likod, hindi, no? Kung ka ba mag-magic. Yeah. Ara lang. Tuduan ako sa mga kabataan. Okay. So please look at the World Risk Index. No? If you look at our exposure is much lower than that of China or Mexico. Meaning, they have more hazards than we do. Okay? Do you understand that? Okay? They're more exposed to the hazards than we do. But why are we number 1? We are number 1 not because of our exposure to the hazards. We are number 1 because of our vulnerability. Ang aton kahuyang. Okay? And our kahuyang, when unpacked, is that, number one, we are highly susceptible. Maulanan ka lang, sipunon ka. Amo na akong susceptible ka mo, dali ka bala malatnan, dali ka maapektuhan. No? That is susceptibility as measured here. Plus, but what is alarming is despite the fact that we are so used, no, to the hazards that are around us, we also lack coping capacities. We cannot cope. Much worse, we also lack adaptive capacities. And that's why the country needs universities like CPU. Hoping that you will help reduce susceptibility, enhance coping capacities, and enhance adaptive capacities of the Filipino people with the body of knowledge and skills that you have. Di ready man kamo sina o daw ma-walk out na kamo? Are we ready for it? Ay, daw wala reaction. Oo. Panumduman nyo, anay. No, I would always encourage even the communities, think about it. No? Kay first part pa lang tas ang presentation. Wala pa ang kululbaan. Okay. So, and why I pulled out this part of the recent report, or global assessment report, because I want you to think, where CPU can contribute, no? The risk level that we have is not just caused by one element, no? Kung ginbaha ka sa lugar mo, hindi lang natungod sa damo sang ulan. Hindi lang natungod poor drainage system, no? Perhaps your infrastructures are also poor. Perhaps the local governance system is also weak, no? Perhaps the community is not cooperating. Perhaps the scientists, no, in our universities do not bother to share the knowledge that they have to communities at risk. Okay? And so there are many dimensions, no, that you can help in, no, when you talk about reducing risk. Okay. One thing you should remember, kagina, hambal ko, naghutikid ko kay Admiral Pama, kay in the introduction of Sir, he says, we need to be disaster ready. Amo ng term ni Sir. Naghutik ko kay Admiral Pama, kag nagsiling, tandaan ko ginang iya nga ginhambal. Because in the current law of the Philippines, it is not acceptable. Why? Why? Disaster means loss of lives and assets. That's disaster. When you have a disaster, it means lives have been lost. Assets have been lost or destroyed. That's a disaster. That's a technical definition of disaster. In the Philippine Constitution, it says, the role of the state is to secure the lives and assets of people. So, when people die, when assets are lost because of hazards, because we are not prepared for it, it is a failure in governance. That's why you keep hearing the term zero casualties, no? Why would someone like Admiral Pama, he could easily retire, and just, celebrate his life, travel around the world if he wants. Why does he keep insisting that you have this? Because at the back of his mind, he's still passionate about his commitment to save lives and assets of the Filipino people. This is what it is all about. Lives and assets. Hindi na siya lahog-lahog, no? And so, the scientists keep saying there is no such thing as natural disaster. There is only such a thing as natural hazards. Remember, disasters or disaster risk is a confluence of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Right? you need exposure and vulnerability coming along with your hazard for a disaster to occur. It doesn't mean when a hazard happens, like heavy rainfall, may disaster ka dahil nga matabo. It's preventable. Okay? It's preventable. We make choices as where we inhabit and how we build and what research do we do. No? If you choose to build along a waterway, no? If you choose to build along a waterway nga guluwaan sang tubig, this is something that you should know about Iloilo. It is an alluvial fan. Because it is an alluvial fan, and it has many rivers draining into that alluvial fan, dapat may guluwaan siya padagat ang tubig. Kung tungtungan mo ina sang infrastructure, ang alagyan sang tubig, diin makadto ang tubig. Diin makadto, sir? Either, you can be waterlogged, mabaha ka, no? Or it will have backflow. Amo nang experience, ang taga-Sambag, may backflow. I-trace nyo bala ang Dungon Creek? Lantawan nyo kung may ending na siya. Kay ang guluwaan sang Dungon Creek, ang puntaya sina gintampakan na. No? And it narrows. No? It's wide somewhere here and then it narrows all the way down to the community. So you can check that out. No? As we said, risk is a combination of your disaster risk, is a combination of your hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. And your death and losses will be a function of your hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. No? So, amo na mag-analyze ka sang disaster risk. No? Hindi ko anay magkadto sa dato sa Iloilo because I want us to understand this. This is what they call the climate system. No? And what we feel right now, if you're not in an air-conditioned room, sagwa, ano ang klima? Maano siya? Mapaang, pero maulanon. Ang kapaang, kag ang maulanon, nga kondisyon, is actually a product of the interaction between what's happening in the atmosphere, what's happening in our bodies of water, the terrestrial location of the area, the cryosphere. All of these create what we call as a climate, as the climate or the climate system. No? So hindi lang na siya products ng atmospheric forces. So please do remember that. And science tells us because we emit a lot of greenhouse gases, we trap the heat, on Earth. No, I will not go through that, the details. But I want just to point out, that in the phenomenon of global warming that is trapped on Earth, I want to enlarge this, para makita nyo. Science tells us that when the heat from the sun reaches the Earth, dapat ga-exit siya. No, it should exit in the atmosphere. But because we have too much greenhouse gases, those greenhouse gases stay in the atmosphere for a very long time. And therefore, heat does not exit. No? And so it's trapped in Earth now. So in terms of heat storage, where do the heat go? Kaya hindi na siya kagwa. 2% go to the atmosphere. 4% go to the cryosphere. No? 5% is absorbed by the land. And you know what absorbs the most? The waters, the ocean. Yesterday, Ma'am Donna kept asking, it was very concerned about storm surges. So I also took, I did extra study on it. You see, the typhoons feed on warm waters. Ang question, because now the ocean is warming, your waters will become rougher. May bagyo ka o wala bagyo, maging mas mabaskog ang mga balod. So please do consider that. Okay. So, I need to discuss this because Iloilo is in a coastal area. And we are a coastal zone. So the scientists did an analysis of, they did a special report on oceans and the cryosphere. And what were their major findings? Because heat is now going into the ocean, we will experience marine heat waves. Ginagyan yun isang summer. Amo na sa Iloilo, tamaan kainit. Di ba? No, you have the heat index. It was not just about the temperature for the day. It was also about the heat coming from the sea entering the city. That's why it was so hot here. No? We will have sea level rise. We have rising ocean heat content. We have ocean acidification. And the more disturbing thing is that we now have ocean deoxygenation. Meaning, ang mga nagakabuhi sa dagat, mapatay. Wala sila oxygen. No? So come to think of it, no? I'm already more than half a century old. We've lived our lives. For those of you who are relatively younger, I hope you get to live yours the way we did. We were able to enjoy the benefits from nature. Of course, some of us haven't taken good care of it. That's why we're in this state right now. And I deeply apologize in behalf of my generation. But you should claim your future. Okay? So, what will this mean for us right now? It means that we need to really raise our awareness of the hazards and our exposure to hazards. I just want to tell you that currently, the United Nations has mapped out the hazards that we have. Normally, in the Philippines, we only know 5. No? Bagyo, ulan, linog, tag-init. No? These are the things that you commonly know. But now they've mapped out 318 hazards. Okay? I will not go through them, but I would like to show them to you that this is really, there are different kinds of hydrometeorological hazards. It's something that a scientific institution like CPU can really, unpack. No, there are extraterrestrial, there are geological, there are environmental, there are chemical hazards. You also have other societal, technological, and then societal hazards. So 318. You might want to study each of them. I was reminded by scientists from the Manila Observatory that when you talk about hazards, hazards are like human beings. They have very specific characteristics. Not all bagyo are alike. Not all rainfall are alike. They have their particular characteristics. And so, we have to characterize, okay, the bagyo. What's the point of doing that? Remember Haiyan, Yolanda? No? People knew that there was a Category 5 typhoon. But, they were not able to characterize it. No? Wala sila ka-realize nga ang Category 5 nga typhoon, pwede, gali ang typhoon balaan, hindi na siya tubig. Hangin ina siya. That force of the wind, kung sala ako, i-correct ako ni karon ni Admiral Pama, kay siya ang Navy experta. No? Alsahon niya ang tubig, kag ihampas pasulod. Okay? So, what will this mean? No? It means also that other than understanding the hazards and our exposure to hazards, we are also required to understand and unpack vulnerabilities. No? And as I said, we need to be able to look into vulnerability. There are many types of vulnerability. Pwede physical vulnerability, ecological vulnerability, social vulnerability, economic vulnerability, cultural vulnerability, and institutional vulnerability. Corruption is an institutional vulnerability. When you don't build your building, when the structural integrity of your building is compromised, that is physical vulnerability. No? When you have destroyed your ecosystems, that is ecological vulnerability. No? When people do not cooperate with each other, ang mga tao sa komunidad, no, wala nagakooperar, no? Wala sila nagabulig, no? That is social vulnerability. Kahuyang ina. Kung tig-aulo sa mga bata, social vulnerability man na, no? And of course, you have some Admiral Pama is very familiar with this, no? And the people at DRRMO. In many communities, the men stay behind. No? Gapabilin sila sa ila komunidad. Kaya nga, anong ginabantayan nila? Ha? Ano, sir? Ang property? Be specific. Anong ginabantayan nila? May kultura sang pagpangawat, pero laban sila baboy, manok, mga sapat, no? That's cultural, no? That can be a cultural vulnerability. That's why in Bangladesh, mag-evacuate sila, dalaya ang evacuate ang mga baka, kanding, no? Everything. When they evacuate, it's not only people. So I don't want to go into these details, but there were 100 indicators that were examined by the World Risk Index, no? So we need a better appreciation of the interaction between hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. The UN says, the scientific community, no, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says, that if we do not address this risk, if we do not reduce your hazard, exposure, and your vulnerability, you will go into a state where we will lose lives and assets. No? This is what they call the risk propeller. We can discuss this at some other time. Okay? Kung may chimpo pa kamo next time. Okay pa kamo? Okay pa kamo? Ha? Now, here is Iloilo. Yes, ma'am. May struggle. So, here is Iloilo's story. Okay, and this is a product of the Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment that was done by Iloilo City in cooperation with the Ateneo de Manila University, the Coastal Cities at Risk Program, the University of the Philippines, the City Government, Manila Observatory, and the National Resilience Council. No? So, ano ang mga hazards sa Iloilo? And we look at the climate projections. No? So, these are the main hazards in Iloilo in the future. No? Sige lang, patapuson, taka mo, distribute sang tinapay kay hindi ako ka-concentrate. Kaon lang ka mo. Pero. So, in the future, we will have significant increase in temperature. Our average rainfall will decrease annually by 5%. And 5% is a lot, especially if your population is growing, no? And the demand is also growing. There will be an increase of rainfall events, extreme rainfall events. Hindi pa ni extreme. Please take note, wala pa ang La Nina. Amo na ning ginagyanta. Good luck sa aton tanan, no? Of course, the typhoons, it will be about the same in number, but the intensity will be more destructive. Okay? And drought, we will have increase in number of days na may drought. Yesterday, Ma'am Donna also asked me, Ma'am, base sa latong data ta, kay siling drought, pero naggadto kami to sa community, may tubig man sila. Please take note that drought means reduced rainfall. Okay? So, pwede nga nag-drought overall sa amo na nga lugar, pero may bastante pa kamo nga tubig. Depende sa inyo nga context. Kung damo kakahoy sa lugar, no? Nga nag-store sang water, sang waay sang drought, laban-laban mag-drought, may tubig ka pa. Do you get that? Pero kung lugar ka nga wala ka ginaulanan, naghinay ng ulan, tapos puro ka semento, waay ka nakastore tubig, kulang ka gid sa tubig. So it's going to be context specific. So these are the results of the study in terms of the hazard. The temperature will increase, as I said, significantly in the future. Rainfall is expected to slightly decrease. There will be more droughts in the future, so prepararan na kamo nga daan. The typhoon will be fewer but stronger. So what the other scientists did was also to look into the vulnerabilities. No? And since you're looking at drought as a factor, the scientists from UP, we look into households without level 3 water connection. Inibilang mga wala pa sang water connection. They look also in the, its relationship on the COVID areas, and then the flooding and the typhoon, as we said, no? Alagyan gid kitaya. And of course, we have the storm surges. Now, this comes from the report of the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So they affirm that yes, Iloilo, is really prone to typhoon and landslides, to flooding, earthquake, storm surges, water shortage, but one of the major hazards that we have is fire. No? Fire. So in terms of our level of exposure, they tried to map out barangay halls and basketball courts where they are, and overlaid it with the different hazards. They also mapped out health centers and hospitals, telecom facilities and schools, and then tried to work on the social vulnerability to examine how vulnerable the people are. So they used data from 180 barangays. Then when the study was being conducted, they used the data from the Philippine Statistical Authority, and then used principal component analysis, and then look at the vulnerability results. So they determined, in Iloilo, we have a very high literacy rate, but when you look at housing, there are many that are non-owners really. They are rent-free residential lots without owner's consent, so there's a lot of informal settlement. We have houses made of light materials, and then, but in terms of access to water, we still do have. Look at the number. That's alarming, no? If you're dealing with water shortage, you have households without access to level 3 water system at 64%. That's the statistics that we have. So I think the mayor also called the attention of our water service providers. No, kay wala pagidya nila maubos, no? They weren't really able to secure the connection of all our barangays. And I'd like to call your attention to this number. In terms of dependency, we have a very high dependency ratio. Damo nagaobra, pero mas damo ang umaasa sa nagaobra. That is a very significant vulnerability at 46%. So, if you look at the vulnerability results, we're looking at about 23 that are very high. But if you map it out, so when they mapped out where the most vulnerable are, this is what the map look like. Okay? Now, if you break it down, in terms of, if you now bring together hazard, exposure, and vulnerability, ari vulnerability lang. Okay? But we said that risk is the coming together of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. So, if you unpack that further, in terms of flooding, ang barangays at risk mo 72. 23 lang ang most vulnerable mo, but if you pull together hazard, exposure, and vulnerability, 72 barangays gid, ang at risk sa flooding. And I think you go around the city now and you will see that, In terms of drought, there are about 25. In terms of storm surges, 22. And at the time when the study was
was being conducted. You have COVID at-risk areas, barangays at 81. No? So, looking at the social vulnerability profile, this is the breakdown. No? So, those who are exposed to flooding, no? So, if you go, for example, to the dependency ratio, diri kuya, diri ko malantaw, ang ibig sabi. What this means is that they either have very young children, they have PWD, they have elderly in their households, they have unemployed in their households. 47% in flood-prone areas are dependent. In drought areas, 48%. In storm surge areas, which are by the coast, it's at 50%. And at COVID exposed areas, it's at 47%. That's why I'm highlighting the dependency ratio. And this is where education is very important. You know, education allows us to be socially mobile. No? Ang iba na nag-skwela pero ay nag-ubra. Ang iba na gintamara na mag-skwela, nag-drop out. Ang iba na way na kwarta, nagsigi papamata. Do you understand that? This is what this actually means, no? So, so in terms, when you do the risk analysis, now these are now the areas of household without, and this is barangay, per barangay na analysis, no? Without level 3 connection. Now, if you map it out, no, so there were top 5 barangays that were outlined here for flooding. Kung na busisiyon. And then we also tried to unpack really what are the sources of their social vulnerabilities and what are the options that we have. No? So take for instance in case of flooding, no? Livelihoods will be most likely disrupted by flooding, and that enhances vulnerabilities. So therefore, there has to be alternative and supplemental livelihoods, no, for flood-prone areas. No? Also, breaking it down in terms of the top 5 most at-risk barangays in terms of drought, the same process, looking at impact and options. Storm surges, no? Ang mga barangays normally at the coastal, look here, at the coastal areas. And then, you have the COVID-prone areas. No? These were the hot spots, no? The areas where also informal settlements were, and the areas were highly dense, no? The houses were too close to each other. Okay. Okay. Now, I'll now go to the province, no? At the provincial level, in a couple of minutes that I have left. So, but before I go to that, I want you to take note that in 2022, it was the 5th warmest record, year on record, and last year was the 6th most, no, warmest the Earth has ever been in. Please do take note that warming in our region is 3 times greater and faster than the global mean. So grabe ang pag-init diri sa aton. You experienced it last summer, expect next summer to be warmer. Even in the rainy period, as you said, when I ask you kung ano ang weather, sagwa abal yung mapaang, no? Please do expect that. Now the question is, kung mapaang siya, ma-aircon na lang kita? That's a big question, sir. No, because I know that there's a lot of demand in universities for air conditioning units. Is that going to be our solution? No? Makancel na lang ta per may klase? No? Masiling kita nga, may gym ka man. You know, have you ever been in those specially designed gyms that we have? During that period of extreme heat, you cannot stay there in 10 minutes. Kay init-init dayon ang imo nga ulo. No? Base pa malangya may-ari ka mo diri materials engineering that you can, you know, design or innovate on materials that can be cooler, no, for our gymnasiums. Okay? And the largest precipitation excesses are also in our region. No? Damo-damo gid taya ulan, no? So please prepare for your outfit. Please do consider that leptospirosis is very real, no? And it's best to advise our kids also to do that. Sea level rise, no? Ambot wa ay kuya gasakay sa barko permi, pero ambot si Admiral Pama kung nabatyagan niya man ini, no? But our Philippine seafarers would say nga kung araga agi kuno sila sa mga oceans ta ang balod kuno mas mataas pa sa ilang nga mga barko, no? Si Admiral Pama na lang na ma-share sa inyo sang iya experiences at sea, no? So we have again higher sea level rise trends here. We have over 7,000 islands, 105 as of the moment or more. Some of them will disappear. But if the earth keeps moving, some of them will also rise. Basi mag-rise ang Benham rise, masaylo tato. Kung maglugdang ang iban. Okay, I will not discuss that anymore. For Iloilo Province, dali lang ha. This is the data set for Iloilo. Kulay na lang lantawon nyo. No? Kulay na lang lantawon nyo. Because this will tell you the rate of temperature increase. No? So in the near term, if we do something about it, no? If we do something about climate change, no? If we reduce our emissions, our increase in temperature will still be at 0.7, 1.3, and 1.5. But if we don't change our lifestyles, if we still continue to do the things that we do, our temperature increase will be at 0.09 from 2020 to 2039, 1.9 by 2046 and 2065, and then beyond that would be about 3.6. You will say, ay, kagamay malang sina, but let me ask you, what's the normal body temperature of a human being? 37. If you have a temperature increase, 37.5, no, 36, 37.5. If you have a temperature increase by about 0.5, what happens to your body? Hilanat ka. If you have a temperature increase of 1.5, what happens to your body? Convulsion ka na. Exactly. That is what is going to happen to Earth. No? And that is what is going to happen to us. These projections are very real. You already experienced that last summer. The question is, will you survive the next extreme heat in Iloilo? So I will not anywhere go to that. This is also the rainfall. The brown shade means reduction of rainfall. The darker teal colors mean there's more rain. Pero ang mga ini, makita nyo, that means there's going to be lesser rainfall. Okay? So in terms of exposure, this is for the province of Iloilo. This is the map for the earthquake-induced landslide areas, no? Amo na nga daw kada bulan ari sa aton diri, no? Ang FIVOX, no? Because look at the spots. Actually, the dam that Halaur Dam, no? Is also near some of those areas. So it's a cause for worry for some, no? In terms of the structural integrity, no? Okay. This is for ground shaking for the province of Iloilo. Lantawan niyo bala? Daw bilog nga probinsya kadto lang kamo to sa norte, no? Bato? Look at that. That's for ground shaking. If you look at ground rupture, it's going to be this area around the Majaas mountain range. No? Sino di taga-Antique? That's why people from Antique have a difficult time going back to Antique during this period and during earthquakes. They have two roads. The one in the coastal road is flooded. The one in the mountains, is prone to landslide, no? And that's why. Sir, bakal ka na lang helicopter mo. Okay. And please look at the tsunami-prone areas. According to scientists, if the Negros Trench moves, the people in the city will only have 20 minutes to go to higher ground. Ang mga ari, diri mga 1 minute, 2 minutes na lang ni sila ya. No? Ang mga diri, lapit to. Na, ang Iloilo, 20 minutes. That's why the next time, for the student council, you have a fun run. This has been a running joke that Donna and I have, but we need to be serious about this, and I'm very serious about this. Next time you have a fun run, the title should be Run for Your Life. No, run for your life, because you have to run faster than the incoming tsunami. Kinalandasig ka maglagan. No? Hindi pwede nga inay. No? And this is the liquefaction area. No? How many of you are from Leganes? If you go around Leganes, makita nyo ni. No? Naga-usmod, no? Okay? Now, I want to show you another dimension of vulnerability. I will not unpack it. But if you looked at social vulnerability sa cases ng Iloilo, I found a very interesting study of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau when they examined the vulnerability in a coastal area. So they look at how many have hard engineering defenses, no? Those that have lesser engineering defenses, if you have storm surges or others, might be more vulnerable. Mas mahuyang sila. Coastal slope is very important. You know what they found out during Yolanda and Haiyan? If your slope is, okay, if the incline, no, is not that steep, kundi mayara nga amo na, no? Kung amo ni, mas dasig siya mag-facilitate sang storm surge. That is what happened in Yolanda, in Tacloban. Pero if your incline is steep, hindi dayon kasaka, no? Ang balod. Pero kung do amat-amat, dasig-dasig siya. No? So that's why coastal slope can be an indicator of vulnerability. And then you have, of course, geomorphology, the shape, of your coast, and the depth of the coast. And they're also looking at natural buffers. O lang tawa bala, pila na lang sa mga lugar ang may natural buffers. Pila ang may mangroves. Sorry ha, tamaan kagamay. Para gamay-gamay, nagid lang yan. Ang may mga natural buffers, no, sa aton. And then, of course, shoreline change. How much have our shorelines changed over time? Ang iban gina-reclaim, no? Ang iban deliberately gina-change because of the infrastructure. Some actually die a natural death. See, the thing about ecosystems is that they're also like Filipinos. They love each other. They get strength from each other. So once you destroy your tide line, you automatically destroy your beach. Nagpatindog ka dira sang seawall nga way alagyan ang tubig, mapatay ang beach mo kay it will facilitate beach starvation. And when there is beach starvation and waters, no, meaning tidal waters can no longer go up the beach, no, and interact with your fresh water, you will lose brackish water. It will cause the death of your wetlands. We are not very conscious of that. We should be. In other countries, may mamuson lang nga ido sa beach, ginasira nila ang beach. Why? Because it will enhance the coliform content. of the water, and it will put at risk the other elements of the ecosystem. So kung gusto mo kuno ma-muson sa natural environment, even in coastal habitats, mapili ka sang proper habitat na pamusunan mo, hindi sa beach. So, okay. So, Iloilo, I have not seen the risk analysis of Iloilo that combines hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. So the last time I visited there, they still need to update it in terms of the province of Iloilo. But this is the number of poor families and the poor populations that we have in Iloilo. And these are the classification of our first to the fifth class municipalities. The fifth class are the ones in dark yellow. Nakibot gid ako kay ang Mina, fifth class. That's a rice producing area. Bingawan is fifth class. Kakilibot, lugar mo na, sir. Inyo na teritoryo. Pati pagid iyan ni President. Okay. Okay. I was so surprised, no? Because those are areas that you will not expect. So, what will this mean, no? It will mean that we need to better understand that risk, no? If we want to be more resilient. So I will skip that. But what is resilience? These are my last two slides, no? And we adopted the we are adapting the UNDRR definition, no? And Admiral Pama can better unpack this later on, no? When you say you are resilient, you resist, you absorb, you accommodate, you adapt to, you transform, you recover, you anticipate the hazards. Kag siguraduhon mo nga hindi ka mapatay, o hindi ka maguba, o hindi ka matumba. That's the only time you can say that you're resilient. The moment you suffer from losses, damages, you are not resilient. Okay. So let me leave you with this slide. Okay. We started off by saying that risk is a confluence of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Amo ni anay ang imo nga intindihon. Why? Because the task towards resilience requires that we reduce the hazard, we reduce the exposure, we reduce the vulnerability. That's why we presented to you the risk profile of Iloilo, for you to know what are the sources of the hazard, the exposures, and vulnerability. Kung kaya mo, mapunggan ang peligro, punggi. No? That's prevention. Like, not building on top of your waterways is preventive. Okay? The other thing that you can do is anticipate it. No? That is the purpose of your early warning. No? Early warning. If you are able to anticipate it, then you can prevent disasters from happening. No? So, if you can anticipate, let's say, a strong storm surge, and evacuate the people from the coastal area, then you prevent losses of lives, no? Hindi mo siguro punggan ang losses of assets kay gubon gid sang dagat, no, ang balay, pero at least you prevent the loss of lives. Now there are some cases nga waay mo mapunggan. You were no longer to prevent the risk. And you were not very good at anticipating it. Kay perme ka lang cellphone, way kagapamati radyo. Let me tell you this, to the young kids that were here. Typhoon Reming, that had a worse disaster for Albay, no? What happened was that they had a very strong, they had, of course, volcanic eruption, long, heavy rainfall, and then nanaog, no? And ang nagiglahar, no? Many of them did not know the danger they were in because wala na sila gapamati radyo. And all the TV stations were cable. connected. So they only had national news, but they were not receiving local news. So please do try to listen to your local news. No? So kung wala mong mapunggan, then you will suffer from disaster. So what do you do? No? When you suffer from disaster, kinanglan makayanan mo ang kabudlay sina. That's why Maniena and the group of scientists that studied resilience said, you have to learn how to absorb the shock. No? Daw si Manny Pacquiao, kabla kung sumbagod ka, kinanglan hindi ka matumba. No? And then, you accommodate, recover, and begin to adapt. Okay? But what we can all do is, if we learn from our past experiences, kailangan na talaga natin magbagong buhay. So that we begin to reduce our hazards, our exposures, and our vulnerabilities. And by enhancing our adaptive and our coping capacities, no? As well. So, and that's the only way we can bounce forward. At the National Resilience Council, we no longer use the term bounce back. We say bounce forward. Okay? Because that's the only way you avert losses and damages and achieve sustainable development. I'm sorry I took up a lot of your time, but madamo gid nga salamat.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Jessica Dator Bercilia. Thank you for the very clear discussion on disaster risks affected by, ano gani atong tatlo, hazard? Hazard meaning sa aton nga language, katalagman, exposure, vulnerability, correct. And that made us aware and then understand and appreciate disaster risk. So madamo gid nga salamat, Ma'am Jessica. This time, we will have our next guest lecturer who will present. Oh, by the way, before that, let me just announce that you can actually send your questions at slido.com, slido.com, for our guest lecturers later for the open forum. And so, Slido, connect to slido.com and then make use of the hashtag 1735374 if you have an internet connection for your questions. And so we proceed to our next guest lecturer who will present the Iloilo City National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Programs and Activities. A big warm round of applause for Ma'am Donna P. Magno.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Alive pa man ah. So thank you, sir, for that introduction. Budlay ni sundan si Ma'am Jack and si Admiral Pama when they start speaking, you know, and sharing with you all those information. Kaka-pressure kasi na kayo, no? They've mentioned they've learned from the best. So I'm also very lucky that I learned from them, and you're luckier than I am because you have learned from these two, including me. Charot. Hindi ba? Binild up ang sarili, oh. Today, I'm going to share with you the efforts of the city government when it comes to operationalizing the DRM concepts that was shared with you earlier by Ma'am Jack, and some of the framework mentioned by Admiral Pama. But before I proceed, mamangkot lang ako. How do you feel after hearing Ma'am Jack, no, present to you the risk profile of Iloilo City? Kung may one word that can describe your feeling, ano ina siya? Yusek Pama mentioned that we are number 1 in the world when it comes to the disaster risk, right? Gin-mention ni Ma'am Jack, we only have 20 minutes in the event na matabo ang strong earthquake with tsunami. One word? Nakulbaan. Ang iban? Nasanagan si President. Ang iban sa likod? Chill. Sige, Kaya isa ko man sa na-learn, no, when we do our advocacy activities, we need to frighten our residents nga. That's the only way for them to take action man. But then, as mentioned by President, no, nasanagan. Isa man na importante nga proseso. Ang masanagan sila sa nagakalatabo. Please. Wala kita clicker. Balik, Anay, please. As mentioned by our MC, no? If you have any questions, kindly go to slido.com. Just type in 1735-374. So for any questions, pwede niyo isend dira kung nahuya ka mo karon mabangkot sa may plenary. All right. As Ilonggos, what are you most proud of, no? Diri sa syudad sang Iloilo. Damo, di ba? Our festival, the longest sailing event, no, sa Southeast Asia, the oldest, our Paraw Regatta, ang aton nga dinagyang nga most awarded nga festival in the country, the food, batchoy, especially no, ang Iloilo has been declared as the only city of gastronomy in the Philippines. So damo-damo na gid ang mga tourists to come over to Iloilo just to taste our food. And then ang aton nga mga architectural nga mga designs, the environmental programs, and then ang mga activities nga ara sa city, sa may arts, including no, ang sa biking naton nga mga activities. We are hailed as the nation's biking capital, o di ba? And this week may week-long sila nga event just to ano ganina siya sir celebrate no ang mga any activities related sa may biking, I think. So ang tanan nga ini, the things that we are proud of, they face or they are threatened by the disaster risks presented to you earlier by Ma'am Jack. Di ba la? We have several hazards. So kung magkilitay sila sang exposures naton, sang vulnerabilities, sigurado, you will have a disaster. So ara dira. And the worst that ever hit us when it comes to flooding was the Typhoon Frank. And that was in 2008. Damo man ang nagsunod ng mga disasters, but then again, we got lucky, no? We were not as badly hit as, for example, ang sa may Samar, no? When Yolanda happened, or Cagayan de Oro when Sindong happened. All because, pilmi naman sulit-sulit, siguro kay prayerful ang mga Ilonggos. And then the second largest earthquake that happened in the country is the 1948 Lady Kaykay. The only earthquake na may pangalan. Di ba? Nga Lady Kaykay, because during that time, amo na siyang sikat nga, I don't know ma'am, was it a dance? Nga ano ni siya? Or tula? Si Kaykay, may manok akong bukay, ginbulang ko sa niway, nagdaog pero patay. So muna siyang uso ko no. At that time, maginasaot, ang duwa katigulang wala kabalo. Ay, sorry. So amuin na siya ko no. That's why the elderly nga naka-witness sina, they were scared every time they hear ang kay, or wala nila na ginapakanta sa mga kabataan because they find it ominous. Because when that happened, the 1948 Lady Kaykay happened. So the rest na witness naman natin siguro, no? The maritime accidents. The worst was the 2019 Iloilo-Guimaras Strait tragedy. And then we had this oil spill. Remember that? Just this year, we declared a state of calamity because of drought, and we had this water scarcity. Kada tuig, the average of fire incidents in the city, I think it's 365 every year. So mas damo pa siya sa number of days sa calendar naton. And then we have 25 coastal barangays, kag sila lagi ang pinaka vulnerable when it comes to storm surges. And as relayed to you by Ma'am Jack just last night or yesterday afternoon, so we had, how many? 56 families and 31 houses nga naguba sang dlagko nga mga balod. So the cost of disaster, no, for the past years in Iloilo City, in 2020 alone, let me check my data, 2021, so our operations center recorded a total of 25,620 affected people. Imagine, and the cost of disaster response operations, well, it amounted to 43 million plus. Imagine that. And when we try to total no, the cost of response operations from 2020 to 2022, the average is 21,426,000. So imagine that no, every year. I'm not sure kung na-capture ang tanan nga cost, but then again, just thinking about 21 million at the average ginagasto. And think in terms of using that amount of money for prevention and mitigation instead of using that for disaster response. So, okay. So, Ma'am Jack, Professor Brasilia, share this framework to us. So, sila niya, Day, I think when you try to do your activities, perhaps you can follow this framework, from preparedness to transformation. Because in Iloilo City, we're not just looking at the preparedness of our people, preparedness for disaster. Rather, we're looking at developing the resilience of our constituents. So ano ang journey nga agyan mo, no? So ginapakita dira sa continuum, may apat na siya, kapwede agyan. We start with the early action. So those are activities that we can do which are meant to avert loss and damage from hazards. And then, as we continue to address our vulnerabilities, we can move towards conducting activities wherein it can be the minimum critical preparedness measures that we can do at the local government unit so that we can minimize the unavoidable loss and damage and cascading disasters. This is followed by the early actions that we can do so that we can bounce forward in a timely and agile manner when disasters hit us. And then we can take transformative actions so that we can avoid future hazards. So these are some of the activities that we do in Iloilo City. So let me share with you some of the examples. So sa early action, so we've been doing activities with the barangays. Kaya nga this is a recognition that our barangays are the frontliners when it comes to disasters. Kung magsunog, sino una? Na magresponde, sino una magbinuligay? Ang taga-barangay, si Sek, di ba? Sek, kamugid na sa inyo barangay. So we invest our funds. We encourage the barangays to invest their funds in improving the competencies of the local leaders and in improving the network of the barangay DRM committees. So muna siya. Every year, we encourage or we meet our BDRMC members and we continue to educate them about DRRM. And then we also have a package of Kabalaka programs. So Kabalaka, well, sa Ilonggo, kabalo naman ka mo, no? Pag ulikid, you show compassion, you show that you care. So damo-damo ang mga Kabalaka programs namon. And one of that is the Kabalaka Camp. Since 2014, we've been working with CPU in this kind of activity. So, ara siya sa Kabalaka Camp. These programs are meant to prepare our residents, halin sa bata, to the elderly, when it comes to disaster preparedness. So, ara siya. And then, ang pinaka-recent na gin-activate namon is the Kabalaka Tour. Again, we cannot be strangers to the program of the city government. So what we do is that we encourage ang mga bata, youth, government officials, department heads to join the Kabalaka Tour because we take them to the different areas in the city wherein we have these best practices when it comes to DRRM. If you try to scan that code, that will lead you to the Flip magazine developed by Yek and her team. Tapos makita ninyo anong mga areas natin sa city ang may best DRM practices. So sang una, nang hulam kami sang bus ng San Agustin to take us around. But this time, kay may bus na ang city, so amo na to siyang minibus namon ang nagadala sa amon sa different areas. And if you are interested, we can also organize a tour for you. And perhaps in the future, we can include CPU sa mga staffs nga ina sa Kabalaka Tour. Alright? One of the things that we do is to assist ang mga universities and DepEd schools to strengthen their own disaster preparedness. So like in John B. Lacson, they wanted to create or to establish this DRR unit within the school. It's an organization composed of the teachers and the students. So isa na sa ilang mga na-accomplish. They were able to organize that group, and then that group they conduct activities within the nearby barangays man. And that, they established a DRR corner within their campus, and they hope to expand that to other John B. Lacson campuses. And also, wala na mong kalipatan, to mainstream and to integrate ang DRR and climate change adaptation in all the local plans of the city government. We have our climate and disaster risk assessment, the comprehensive development plan, and the strategic plan of the city DRMO or council. And the use of science information and tools. Mugi na ang pinakadako nga influence ang National Resilience Council sa amon ni Sir Alex Pama and ni Ma'am Jack. So we use those information like the maps developed from the SIDRA, the climate information shared to us from Manila Observatory. We use that to make risk-informed decisions. Like during COVID, paano ni Mayor ginpili ang mga areas kung din unahon ang mga bakuna. So it was based on the area with the most vulnerable nga sector. Like ang mga, din ang damo ng mga senior citizens. So sila ang ginuna, ang ginbakunahan. Or during the time wherein we had an increasing case of AGE, acute gastroenteritis, and cholera, the same map was used by the council to make a decision whether to use these funds for this particular area or not. So preparedness to transformation, again, ang isa ka idea is to have that minimum critical preparedness measure. So what have we done in the city government? Investment sa equipage. And then investment in the development of the standard operations procedures ang aton nga operation center, evacuation management, kag sa aton nga pag-improve sang risk communication and emergency telecommunications. So we've spent several millions for that because in moments like this, nga grabing ulan, we need to inform the barangay leaders, the residents on what to do kay mabaskog ang hangin, they need to evacuate. So we use the communications network that we have established to warn the people. For early action, to encourage timely and agile decisions from the local leaders. Palihog ko. Isa sa mga ginubra ni Mayor is to establish the eye care centers. And, during his first term, gini siya nga baby project. The idea is that in one location, the PSTMO, the ICPO, CDRMO, and the BFP ara sa isa ka lugar. So that when there's a need for us to deploy the first responders, mas dasig, kag ululupod sila. So the eye care centers serve as the palihog-kuyak balikanay, as the nerve center and as a decision support system for the members of the CDRMC. So amo na siya. Ang data ara dira. They process the data, they analyze the data, and we give that back to the members of the council, especially the chair. Kag amo na ang ginabasihan ni Mayor like yesterday. So mapa-preemptive evacuation kita o kun hindi. The eye care centers also decentralize the city's risk governance kay nga gin-establish na siya in the different parts of the city. Kung sang una, manawag ka mo sa ICER, sa grandstand pa siya mahalin, subong ang eye care ara na sa tupad balay ninyo or sa tupad nga barangay ninyo. And a few years back, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, there's an offer for CPU to host one of the eye care centers. Kaso lang ang Sir President, I think you had a problem with the donors of the land kay kinanglan kuno ilisensya pa. But then there was that interest to establish one eye care center in CPU. So think about this. Within your campus, you have the police, the Bureau of Fire, the ICER, and the Public Safety and Management ng office sa lugar nga ina. And then it demonstrates the strong public-private nga partnership. Kaya nga, ang tanan niya duta, kung diin ang mga eye cares, it's a donation from private sector. So like in eye care Mega World, it's donated by Mr. Kevin Tan of the Mega World. So the eye care center will sit on a 2,500 square meter lot. So ang duta subong sa Mega World is 120,000 per square meter. So imagine the cost of that, nga ginpagamit sa city government. So may araman kita sa may Ungka Terminal. It's donated by the Hamora family. In Kalumpang, donated by the Huntado family sa Huntado subdivision. And then in Suok, the land is owned by the city government. So if CPU is still interested, we're open to discuss that. And then it also reflects the agile leadership of the city government. So currently, amo na siya ang distribution of the eye care centers. So eye care, by the way, stands for Iloilo City Action and Resilience Center. It used to be called as Iloilo City Action and Response Center. Pero siling na NRC, teka lang, baka lang bumalik kayo sa dating konsepto, PD 1566. We are into risk reduction right now and resilience. Why don't you change response to resilience? So 2 weeks ago, during the meeting of the council, we changed the name into Iloilo City Action and Resilience Center. So we have 5 operational eye cares. Yay, that's the influence of NRC. So what are the 5 eye care centers? 1 in Gaisano, you can visit us there. Sa compound ni Gaisano, ICC. 1 in Angka, in Sook, Kalumpang, and Tansa Esperanza. 2 are under construction, eye care Mega World and Nabitasan. And the proposed areas, ara sa may Barrio Obrero and Balibago, or Balabago, and perhaps CPU, no? Pangatlo. Part of the early actions that we have done in the city government is to have the hazard sensor network. Why are we able to tell you no kung ano nakadamo ang rainfall sa kada area? It's because of the presence of that sensor network. And one of the hosts of the sensors is CPU. So palakpakan naton that they allowed us to install one of the sensors diri. So it's a combination of the rain gauge and the P-alert system. The P-alert system can detect the P waves kung may linog. Although it can only inform us for a few seconds kung may linog, but like in Japan, it's enough to tell them nung i-switch off ang mga importante ng mga electrical connections. Diri may P-alert ka mo and the rain gauge. So like last Wednesday, when we had this torrential rain, so the CPU rain gauge registered a total of pila to man? 83 millimeter rainfall. So amo to kadamo. So that's why don't be surprised na ginbaha ang syudad. Kay for 30 minutes nga sige-sige ulan, 83 millimeter rainfall ang nagtupa. And we were able to tell that because of the hazard sensors. So ang mga dots nga na will tell us kung ano kadamo ang rainfall nga nabaton kay it changes its color depending on the amount of rainfall received. And it follows the Pag-asa rainfall advisory. So ga-change na siya from green to yellow to orange to red and to violet. Depende sa kadamuon. So like last week, pila ka dots dira ang nahimo nga violet. So it was a torrential rain, no? Nga nagigo sa Iloilo City. Yek? So aside from the NCDR nga mga sensors donated by Taiwan, amo pa ni siyang iba nga ginabasihan naton. So we have the flood sensor given by JICA nga ara sa kalubihan, but we still need to what do you call that? Calibrate kaging kayo ang bridge. But the funny thing diri sa sensor nga na audio naman ang warning. So every time mo magsaka ang tubig and it touches the first level, so ang recorded niya message is being activated. So you will hear Darwin Papa saying, magaligmat, ang tubig nagsaka. Something like that. So 3 ka levels. The first time na tumunog, excited ang taga-Kalubihan, Ma'am! They made a phone call. Ma'am, it's 11 o'clock in the morning and we've heard for the first time the sensor. Hasta alas 11 gabi liwat. And they were like, Ma'am, hindi siya pwede ma-off. Galilingin ang ulo namon. All because sulit-sulit siya. But the point is, that sensor was telling them kung ano nakataas ang tubig and they need to evacuate. So, muna siya. We placed the sensor in Kalubihan because during Typhoon Frank, isa ka elderly ang napatay. And when we had that installed sa may Kalubihan, the family members started crying. Because according to them, if only we had that device in 2008, siguro si Lola buhi pa. So that's the importance of the early warning devices. And we also use the Pag-asa automated weather stations, the flood sensor in Pagsagaan, Pavia, and the Shell automated weather stations. So 4 ina siyang ari diri sa city. So like last summer, kung ano makatag kami sa inyo kung pilang heat index, all because of the automated weather station. Kag-ang ato niya AWS that recorded the highest heat index was in Diversion Road. Ang Shell sa Diversion Road. Naga 42, 43 lang ang record ni Pag-asa, but that AWS recorded a 48 degree nga heat index. Ginipsan lang namon kay basi magpanic. But when the mayor learned about this, he started to ask nga And Ma'am Jack explained niya because of the development in the area, kay puro na siya concrete. So think about the urban heat island effect. Nga di ba? Once nga mag-trap sa init, di ba? Dugay na siya nga mag-dissipate, grabe na siya ang effect sa palibot. So siling ni Mayor, we need to increase the green spaces along the diversion road. So his decision to change the palm trees nga ara sa tunga sang dalan was influenced by that. So sila niya islan naton sa mga native trees nga naga-crown para mas damo ang mga shaded areas sa may diversion road. And that's what we call transformative decisions influenced by science. And that's Mayor Jerry Treñas for you. Amo nang ginakalipay ng Ma'am Jack kag sang NRC because he listens to science. Yek? So may mga CCTVs man kita. So pwede tagit ka mo i-monitor. So we have 202 cameras in the city. Yadi tikalon, 202 lang gani. So ang anong gamit we use that for hazard and disaster monitoring. Like during this period, para manigarilyo, makita ka mo. Some of the cameras face the waterways. So ara sa Dungon Creek, ara sa Ortiz Wharf, ara gatubang sa Iloilo Guimaras Strait. So we can see the movement and the behavior of the waves. Sang una, basta ulan, masulay pa na kami, magwalibuton, kay wala kami mata. Now that we have the CCTV cameras, we now have eyes on the ground. O diba? Pwede na kami makamarites using the CCTVs. And, ara na siya. That's our eyes on the ground. So we have a central command center dira sa may Gaisano. So again, if you're interested to join the Kabalaka Tour, we can take you there. So good subong guys, tandain nyo gani sila tanan, and we will start monitoring President, Daguhoy, kung siya makadto. But that's our command center. That's where the emergency calls come in. Kung may mga emergency ka mo, may mga vehicular accident, nga ara sa dalan, so dira ma-monitor man namon. Yet, so other activities nga related sa early actions to facilitate ang agile and timely manner nga pag-respond to DRM nga mga issues is the food security program of the city government. This was implemented under the APEC project, ma'am, no? Implement ini siya sa Lanit, Haro. So para ini siya sa mga IPs. So they were taught about communal gardening. And the beautiful part of this one is that during COVID, nag-survive ang mga ati because of this. According sa ila, di ba, limited ang movement. That garden supported their needs. Siling nila, we did not go hungry because of this garden. So dako ang pasalamat nila nga natagaan sila sang amo sina nga programa, and we tried to work with CPU sir para nga i-sustain ang ginsuguran sang project nga ini. But I think we need to start with our Senro. Kaya ang garden nagsala ila contractor gintabuna nila. So we need to identify a new area, but the technology is with them, and we hope to expand this para mas damo nga communities ang mabuligan. Aside from this project, the city government has also what we call JPT, Ediscape, urban gardening project. It's a food security program again, and it's one of the climate adaptation pathways nga na-identify nila to answer the issue on gutom. So amo na siya. Yek. And of course, working with the different partners. Gamay lang na siya kay hindi ko na madumduman ang iba, but these are the major partners that we have, and we still continue to work with them. Yek. And the last, the transformative ng mga measures that we do in the city government. Ara ang isa. We continue to provide avenues for our stakeholders to learn about risk reduction and resilience. And this one, the forum, the seminars like this, mga trainings, for us, it's an avenue to change the perspectives of key stakeholders. In this case, ang mga architects kag engineers. Kaya nga, they are the ones designing the buildings. With the issue of climate change, it matters kung anong ilang perspective. So we have to influence them para siling ni Ma'am Jack na, di ba? Anong kasagutan sa sobrang init? Pag-install sang additional nga aircon, perhaps sa particular group that will answer the issue. Pero sa kadamaan, paano? So it can be answered by architectural design. Perhaps bigger windows, di ba? So na-hurt ang among engineer one time. Kasi look at this iCare building. Siling ni Ma'am Jack, di ba? Tani, it follows ang mga design that will also, reflect our climate change adaptation nga measures. Sin ko tanawabla, puro glass. Pag brownout ang January, una kami nga na-roast, kay init-init, gidya. So siling niya, Donna, that's because, kung maglakabay aral, puro kamo ang galakat. Puro technical people, understanding all this data, this analysis. Wala nyo kami ginadala to take a look at those infrastructure. So sugod-subong ang advocacy ko is to take them to nilakbay aral so that they also learn what are the latest yung mga designs for climate change adaptation nga mga efforts. So isa na sa bago kong advocacy, bring the architects, bring the engineers, and perhaps CPU can also start doing that. Expose your students, di ba la? Sa mga makabagong pag-uusap at disenyo that can contribute to climate change adaptation. And then, the environmental programs of the city government. So it is worth noting, no, ang mga mangrove reforestation naton, nga ara sa Esplanade, and some of the barangays kag along the Iloilo City River. Yeah? Run through lang, please. The Iloilo Tree Park, this is something to look forward to sa may lanit. Kaya pwede nyo na madala ang pamilya nyo dira, maglagaw. And I think it will also hit, no, ang mga mental health ng mga programa sa syudad. Kaya kung taka-ana ka mo sa buhay sa syudad, gusto nyo makita sa mga kahoy, you can go there. The beach forest sa may Boulevard Molo. And then, may isa pa na, somewhere in Hinaktakan. And then, we also have our mental health program. Kaya we've noticed the increasing cases of mental health issues, particularly during COVID-19. So, siling ni Mayor, hindi pwede pabayaan. So, we have to introduce a program. So, Ma'am Jack, along with other professionals, sila gina ang nag-push nga suguran ang amon niya mental health program. And so, we launched the Ginhawa 2.0 mental health program of Iloilo City. Again, I've heard nga, di ba, strong man ang inyo programa, ang course on psychology, and perhaps your students as well, sir, and mga experts can help us in this program. And by the way, ang amon nga staff sa opisina nga nagauyat sang programa is a summa cum laude graduate of CPU, Shari Ledesma. So, thank you for giving her to us, for preparing her for this kind of task. And worth noting, no, ang Iloilo City local housing nga mga programs. Kaya nga, one of the things that came out in the assessment was that most of the victims ng storm surge, sunog, bagyo, are the same households. Sulit-sulit lang. So sila nga mon, Mayor, imagine, in a year, that single family earns as much, hindi magdubo sa 50 mil. So imagine that. So sila nga mon, nasunugan siya, pag storm surge, ilag yapon balay. And sometimes, duda namon, wala na nila ginapakayong balay nila. Kaya kung partially damaged, hulato nila ang next na bagyo para totally damaged siya. And instead of receiving 7,000, they will receive 10,000. So imagine that. CSWDO will give them 10,000 kung totally damaged. Bongo will give 10,000. Si Ko mahatag 10,000. Si DRMC, mahatag 10,000. So that's 40,000 already. Sino pa nga mga senador, kag mga NGO sa maghatag. So, you know, if you will try to observe, after sa mga disasters nga na, you will find most of the household members nakariband ang buhok. Ang kapanugid, sina mga taga-CSWDO man. But then again, pag feedback sina kay Mayor, again, siling ni Mayor, in that case, we prioritize them in our resettlement program. Hindi pwede nga sulit-sulit na lang biktima sila. It may be, you know, a joke for us, pero hindi man na madali for the household members, nga masunugan ka, magubaan ka balay every year. So siling ni Mayor, sila ang i-prioritize naton. So that, as mentioned by Ma'am Jack, take out the exposed elements sa area nga na may disaster ka pa bala. Perhaps we can reduce our disaster, no? Pero totally wala ka disaster dira kung pangkakson mo sila kag ipang silo sa safer place. So that's one example of the transformative action taken by our city mayor. And of course, all these things that we have done in the city government was influenced by the CIBRAD project, funded by JICA and implemented by CityNet. Kaya because of that project, ang amon isa ka academic partner, gali by the way, is CPU at the time. So amo na siya, we were able to strengthen the different sectors to sustain that, to sustain the gains of the CIBRAD project. We introduced the Kabalaka program. Kaya nga why do we do all these things? Because under the Kabalaka program, our mascot, si Toto kag si Nene, our intention is that we create a new generation of Ilonggos, new generation of Toto and Nene, nga resilient to disasters, and that they are imbued with the spirit of Kabalaka. Nagakabalaka sila sa mga elderly, sa mga persons with disabilities in the environment, particularly during disasters. So I hope CPU will become one of our partners in creating this June generation of Toto and Nene. So madamo nga salamat. May I invite you to please like our page, Facebook page, Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office. Ang the rest of the stories, you can find it there. Kaya mga advisories, no? Makita ninyo dira. And Jack, so amo lang na. Madamo nga salamat sa inyong tanan for listening.
Madamo gid nga salamat, Ma'am Donna Magno. And so we heard about the Iloilo disaster risk profile from our first lecturer and the Iloilo City National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Programs and Activities from our second speaker. And Ma'am Donna talked about the eye care center inside the CPU campus. Push natin yan. And talking about also, she talked about transformative actions. And so this time, bringing it closer to home, we will listen to the talk about the CPU Disaster Preparedness Plan and Organization and Ways Forward by our CPU Vice President for Administration, Engineer Danny C. Molina.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Bernie. Good morning, everyone. May persa pa? Hasta alas 12:30? Kung 1 hour kay Ma'am Jack nga lecture, ako mga 1 hour and a half ni Guro. Okay, may home court advantage, so makapagusto kita. Okay, so I'll try my very best to make this presentation very short because I know that there is still another very important part of this program, which is the workshop, which will serve as our roadmap sa aton nga resiliency program. So I'll just give you an overview kung ano ang ginahimo naton diri sa city, sa Iloilo, sa CPU I mean. But before that, sa mga estudyante, there is one very important thing I learned today from Ma'am Jack. Air conditioners. Pila gani ka times ang iya nga problem nga ginaano hatag sa aton compared sa mga mga vehicles naton. Batian nyo? Pabungol-bungol sila Balaan ko na. Kaya naga-demand sila ma'am nga ang tanan nga classroom sa aircon because of the heat index. Te, okay na kamo, convinced na kamo kung hindi ta magpa-aircon, ha? Yes na sila. Okay, sige, that's 13,000 times, ma'am, di ba? 11,000 times. So remember that, Sa isa lang na ka air conditioning unit. So if we will install like 500 air conditioning units, wow. Basi hindi na ni magpartner ang NRC sa aton, kag si Ma'am Donna, kung damo-damo na ta di aircon sa CPU. Because wala kita nag-contribute sa solution, we are creating another problem. Press, ano ni man? Naka-order na kami mong? Okay, sige. So, another thing, it's so good that I was able to go to the dream project of the city of Iloilo. Ato kami nag-coordination meeting 2 weeks ago. And I have the privilege to have a short tour sa ila itong monitoring system. Sorry. Isling ni Ma'am Donna kagina, pwede ya ma-monitor. Kundiin kita makadto. Oo. So, hambalan nyo lang ko, kundiin maagi, kay balaan ko ang wala makover sang mga CCTV. Okay, sige. So, very quickly, so we have here, ang assignment was CPU Disaster Preparedness Plan and Organization and Ways Forward. Okay, sige. Ma'am, please. Actually, it's not a disaster gidya, because we don't expect nga grabe gid ang disaster. So as of now, ang structure natin diri sa CPU is we have this emergency response team. Okay? So perhaps later as I would say, move forward with this project because we know that after this, this will not be the end of our task here at CPU, but rather we will go on the next level so that later on makita nyo the reason why we would like to move forward with this project. So we have the emergency response team as the main committee that is responsible in acting into incidents that's happening inside the campus. And under that, there are 11 sub-teams that are working together depende kung ano ang kinahanglan. So we have first aid, we have electrical and power systems, we have medical triage, we have media and communications, because we have to communicate sa my community because that's very important. Like say may mga incident diri sa sulod where students are involved. So dapat we have to make our statements. Kay kun kaisa, una pa ang tagasagwa maghimo komentar damo na negative nga mga istorya, ang side sang university wala pa mabalaan kun ano gid ang tutuod. So we have that. And then we have also our security. We have our search and rescue. We have psychosocial, which is also very important, especially sa mga affected nga students, faculty, and staff. No? And we have our spokesperson. So kung may matabo, we have one authorized person to speak for the university. And then we have our evacuation leads, in case nga we have to evacuate our faculty, staff, and students. We have designated areas for evacuation because CPU is a 24-hectare campus, so dako-dako siya. So we have designated the evacuation areas for different buildings in the campus. We also have logistics. We have also our fire brigade, and that's it. That comprise our emergency response team. So for now, maybe perhaps as we mature with this disaster resiliency program, okay, that will be revised, and ma-fit gid nato nga we are resilient ready nga university. Okay, so the purpose of that emergency response team is to train and lead members of the CPU community in responding to an emergency or a disaster situation. I don't know, kay bag-up lang ko in this office, if that was already activated in 2008 because, one disaster that hit the university was the Typhoon Frank, where it caused several millions of damage to the university. But right now, okay, the team is in place, so if ever there are incidents or disaster, so each members are already trained, on what to do in case this thing happen, may sunog, in case may pagyan nga mga disaster nga possibly wala na bibaha di mong masyado sa Iloilo, unlike before during our time nga halos every year may baha gidaya. So enjoy kami kay permi wala klase 2 days, 3 days, and then ubog kada baha sa sagwa. That's the thing you missed, mga bagko nga mga estudyante wala na baha. Okay, sige, next please. Those are the trainings that we conducted. That's our search and rescue group. Okay, so we also did training with the Bureau of Fire, Iloilo City. That's rappelling everything, and then the use of equipment. They taught our personnel. And then also, the response team purpose is to prepare the CPU community for potential crisis by training volunteers, developing an emergency response plan, and reviewing the equipment necessary to respond to a crisis. Okay, so this is the drill that we have. So we train our students, because commonly, kunwari din sila sa sulod sa campus, duwa lang ang ginabantayan namon, nga mga disasters nga matabo. Hindi gali disaster, kay kung disaster, siling ni ma'am may mapatay gid, Okay. Nga mga incidents, so one is sunog, and then the other one is earthquake. And then it's really difficult to evacuate, kay pila gani kabilog estudyante ta. CPU right now, we are more than 15,000, Yes, to evacuate 15,000 people at the same time, grabe nga challenge, So we have a regular, drills, for fire and earthquake, And I hope that you students, especially those present here today, would really take this one seriously, because ang iban sa ila abila drill lang niya, kadlaw-kadlaw lang. But when time comes nga may sunog gid or kung may earthquake gid, dito nyo ma-appreciate nga, ang drill is really very important, And that happened, Kaya because permi kita nag-drill, earthquake drill especially, sang maglinog dire, wala kita nagka-problema sa pag-evacuate, So you are already used, Balaan nyo na kung ano ang inyong himuon, Ang himuon naton. Okay? Okay, so those are the equipment that we have in case an incident happen. We also have our own fire truck, just in case na kinahanglan siya. Our man lift, which we use during search and rescue, especially kung ang mga i-rescue dito sa higher elevations, second floor or third floor, so we can use our man lift. We also have our ambulance to ferry patients nga kinahanglan doon sa clinic or immediately to the nearest hospital. And several fleets of vehicles also nga pwede nato magamit. Okay, so also the team is responsible, no? That response team members should be ready to respond immediately with pre-planned steps to mitigate the disaster. No? So that's also one of the objectives of the response team. So invite ko gid ang amon nga mga first responders, no, to attend this lecture because that is very important para maintindihan nila ang ilang role, no, because basi ma-think lang sila nga ano gina-impose lang na sa inyo sang university, no, and then they are taking it lightly. No, we are dealing with real things, no. So that is why, no, we are very thankful nga ara kamo you volunteered, no, to be first responders, no, in case there are situations, no, or incidents that will happen in the university. And then, okay, the responsibility is to direct volunteers, monitor safety issues, no, and implement the necessary procedures to start the recovery process. So that is also another very important part of the process. No? That is why we provide psychosocial supports, no, especially to those nga masiling naton nga grabe gid ang trauma, no. Kay like in our last earthquake drill, well, it's a drill, no. So may drama, di ba? May mga actors. So nagpili kami sino ang na-injure, sino ang amoni. What happened was ang mga actors namon amo pang naging victim. So meaning they are experiencing trauma, right? Kaya ti na kondisyon ng ila mind nga may drill kita, ikaw ang nabali, ikaw ang ano. But in reality, sang ara na ang drill, o yala, ang actors, amo pa ang naging victim. Abi namon laglawag lang tutuod na gali. No? So meaning to say nga, kung ara na gid man ang calamity, no? Ang imo nga feelings, emotion na galain gidaya, no? So coping, no, is very important. So kung kinahanglan nga after that drill nga may mga ipang debrief kita because they have very bad experience, so we give support, no, to those kind of people. Okay, on the education side, no, we have this, no, DOST sponsored wind turbine R&D lab, no. So what is the importance of this lab in terms of resiliency? This one, no, we can simulate here wind speeds, no, like 200 kilometers per hour, no. Kahit we will be, as presented by Doc Jack a while ago, we'll be experiencing mga category 4 and 5 na nga mga storms. And we are dealing with, hindi laglawog nga mga, ang, ano ganina, tawag mong hangin? Oo, hindi laglahog, no? So, they are traveling at 200, no, say, kilometers per hour. Hindi lang na sila nga mga tag 80, 120, which is the usual before. But now, because of climate change, no, so ang wind speed subong nag-abot na sa mga tag 200 kilometers per hour. So we have this, no? We have this testing lab which we can use to simulate, no, isang characteristics ang wind that are running at 200 kilometers per hour. And likewise, no, that will help us later on, no, design structures that are resilient, no, to wind speeds, no, beyond 150 or 180 kilometers per hour. So that's the objective of that laboratory. So we hope that we could come up, no, with researches later on that will help us, no, to become resilient university and a community. Okay. So recently, no, just this school year, we also have 2 researches in the College of Engineering, which I believe, no, will also help us later on, no, to become resilient, no, in case nga may mga calamities na matabo. These are preventive nga mga technologies that we are developing in the College of Engineering. Kung magbakal kita, mahal, no? So we are trying to develop, no, we are trying to develop locally made, no, nga mga technologies, no? So these are already completed researches, no, in the College of Engineering. One is to design and evaluate a solar-powered, no, LoRaWAN Arduino-based rain gauge and water level alert system to be implemented in Dungon B, Haro, Iloilo City. Okay, so Inisha, what's so unique with this is it's solar-powered, meaning hindi bala kung may mga calamity, usually wala power. No? So even without power, this will run. Ang iban is very dependent on internet. Wala power, wala internet, wala data. So this one is utilizing a technology that is not dependent on internet. Okay? It uses LoRaWAN. Okay? So this one is very specific, no? Rain gauge, water level alert system. So may ara kita na, pero very limited. So we would like to help the city, no? Like put up, no? If this will become successful, no? We will help the city put up several, no? Of this so that ang bilog na city ma-monitor gid nila. That is why, no, Ma'am Donna, starting today, do not say, sang una partner namon si CPU. Yes. Subong partner na gid kita ya. Okay? Kaya daw nasubuan ko nga asang una partner nga asubong hindi na. What happened? My forever na. Yes, that's it. Tama ka, sir. My forever. So one is the rain gauge. The second is to design, construct, and evaluate the performance of a sustainable LoRaWAN. So ang technology nga ginagamit naman sa engineering is LoRaWAN. No? And Arduino-based IoT system and database monitoring, implementation for air quality monitoring of Haro, Iloilo City. No? Okay? So ang number one, tapos na gid na siya, complete na gid na. And then ang second is almost patapos naman. No? There are just little modifications nga obra. Okay? So next, please. Actually, those two projects are a prelude to a very big project that we'll be conducting. No? The Brace Iloilo project. We are working that with Ma'am Donna. No? So we are trying to perfect the technology. The moment nga ma-perfect na siya ang technology, we will go with the Brace Iloilo project. May proposal na siya. Ano na lang gani, Ma'am Sam, ang kulang? Funding. Ari di sa NRC, basi kung makapangayo, tabulig sa ila. Si Ma'am Sam Haspe is the main proponent, no, of that program, upod kami and some other engineering students, no, the Brace Iloilo project. So we hope that this will really come into reality. Kaya nakita naman natin nga there is really a need, no, for Iloilo City, no, nga ma-monitor ang bilog na city because there are a lot, no, of vulnerable areas, no, sa mga hazards. So we'll go for that, no. Tapos na ang proposal, funding na lang ang kulang. But pila ka no, Ma'am Sam ho, ara na, Ma'am Sam. Ma'am Sam, si Ma'am Sam na lang maistorya. There you go, because he's the main proponent.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I am Engineer Sam from the College of Engineering. Brace Iloilo stands for Building Resilience and Adaptive Capacity through Early Warning and Response System for Iloilo City. So, actually, short background lang. We were part of the Climate Resilient Cities project of USAID. We usually attend their forums. And what we found out is that medyo we lack data when it comes to preparing our communities in such mga disasters, typhoons, floods, etc. So I was really happy to see ang gin-present bala ni Ma'am Donna ng mga equipment that is already in place, which is we have a similar framework. What we want is that we want to give the community the information nga kinahanglan nila in order to quickly respond to such system. So what we want is to build a network of, say, sensors, so rain gauge, wind, like ang gina-develop sa mga students namon, and we place it in areas where we see nga, based on the findings of the Iloilo City government, let's say flood risk areas and beyond. So when we say beyond, usually ang ma-determine namon nga cause of flooding is kay damo floodplains in the city of Iloilo, generally flat ang city of Iloilo. So diin mahalin ang water. Usually it comes from the upstream. So we wanted not only in Iloilo City but also to include ang mga upstream areas where we can detect early ang, let's say, rise ang level of water. So say wala diri nagaulan pero makibot kita ay nga nagbaha because nagaulan gali upstream and then wala sang sensors nga makadetect sina. So that's what we want. So it's an we want nga IoT system siya so that it can be accessed by everybody. But the other thing is that as Sir Molina has said, when madula ang aton nga internet, we still need to access that data, and that's what we're trying to do. We want nga it still stores data and it still can transmit data despite nga madulaan kita internet or madulaan kita sang kuryente. So that's what Brace Iloilo is all about. So gin-design na ni namon siya in 3 phases. So the first 2 phase would be the technology development. And as of now, we have developed the technology, but we still need to improve it. So ang amon lang actually gid nga dako gid nga hump on that is time and money. So sir, basi pa lang, you know. And then the next phase would be, obviously, we want to transfer the technology to the people who needs it. So we want to involve the community because we want nga may ara man sila sense of accountability, sense of responsibility, and may ara man sila empathy towards sa ilang community. So the phase 1 and phase 2 would be more on technology development, building and making the technology very reliable and very robust. And then next would be building the people who will use this technology. So I think that's it for Brace Iloilo.
Yeah, thank you, Ma'am Sam. And then, of course, no, we would like to impact the whole country, no, not only the whole country, but other areas as well, no, with other countries with similar situations sa Iloilo City, by no, replicating this technology once we perfect it. Okay, so next, please. Oh, so that's it, no? What do we expect from now on until the coming days? So number 1 is to strengthen dynamic collaboration between the academies, government units, and non-governmental organization. No? And so with that, kung may ara na kita, a very good linkage no, with the different organizations around us, we would like no, to be an institution known as a center of resilience, committed to build not only a resilient university, but a resilient Philippines. So those things were also mentioned by our university president. And with that, no, so we can assume our guests here that you have our 100% support, no, in whatever way that we can do in as far as making our university and community resilient. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Danny C. Molina. And so this time we will proceed to our open forum. And so if you have questions to our speakers, to our guest lecturers, now is the time to ask your question. Anybody? Oh, yes, ma'am. So maybe you can give your name and then the unit or department you are from, and then the question to our lecturer or to our speakers earlier.
Good morning. Annalie Longos from NSTP. Actually, I will not be asking a question, but this will be a reaction. I'm just happy this was presented this morning because this is in support, and Sir President, maybe a follow-up of my communication months ago for the reiteration of SHED for the establishment of the school-based National Service Reserve Corps. The NSRC is composed of graduates of our NSTP, CWTS, and LTS. And they are called NSRC reservists with the purpose of training, motivating them, and organizing a reserve which can be called during times of disaster. And this is in accordance with PDRM Act of 2010, if I'm correct, RA 10121, wherein the NSRC reservist will be utilized during times of disaster, environmental protection, civic welfare literacy, and the like endeavors. So I hope, sir, we can really establish now our school-based NSRC. Thank you.
Thank you for that reaction, ma'am. Well, let's get a brief reply from our President, Dr. Dagohoy.
We will And I'm grateful that there's a connection between our need, Ma'am Annalie, and what we have today. It is not an accident that the Lord has just placed things in their proper order. Remember, we were talking about having a director specifically for that, and we are trying to move people kahit hindi matakadugang sang employees dayon. Kahit ari diri si Dr. Palomar, every time we add employees to the university, we make sure that it's sustainable. So, ang atong istoryahan initially was to rearrange ang mga roles, and hopefully ang isa natong ka-employee dili can fit into that role while being employed here. Kay tiginatanaw ito man ang viability sa aton financial resources when we add employees to the university. Dapat may reason for us to add another one. Kay tinatanaw ang stewardship sa university. So it will happen. Kagapasalamat ako na hindi na kita magdugang sa mga equipment. Hopefully, we can link some of our equipment needs sa aton city, and we can maybe ask for resources that can start that unit. So, ang aton lang nga goal is to be compliant with SHED, although kadamo kisa sa mga requirements sa SHED, kadaw malipong na ako sang ilang requirements kay sunod-sunod kay mayo lang kita, kidako kita university, pero mga gagmay nga mga schools. Just imagine for every requirement you have to come up with a director, for example. Kung gagmay ka nga eskwelahan, hindi mo maubos ang requirements ng CHED. Pero sa aton, what we just need to do is to rearrange or maybe readjust or realign, and we are doing that, and hopefully this aligns with the desire of Admiral Pama, that we will be able to deputize not just our kadete naton, kag those who are involved in the program under sa imo, Ma'am Annalie, but also this will be the DNA sa aton university that will be ready for this moving forward. So I'm excited. Kaya sa funding aside, siguro may mga aspects nga we don't have to worry much about that. Sa repositioning lang of our employee, I think that's doable. And overall, from our students' side, I think we can deputize them towards this. Thank you.
Thank you for the positive response, Dr. Dagohoy. Sir Alex will add something.
Thank you very much for that question. In fact, that's why we are here. On 2 points, with the concurrence of President Dagohoy, I am talking now as a member of the Board of Trustees, the CPU. And you would notice that this is the very first time that the Board of Trustees has a committee on disaster resilience. And that gives an idea to you of how serious we are now, not only the management of CPU, headed by President Dagohoy, but all the way to the BOT. We have given the assurance to CPU management from the board of whatever it is that is needed to support our advocacies and efforts on DRR will be supported at the Board of Trustees. On the other point, ang pamangkot mo about the RA 1121, the NDRIM law, that you're correct. Very emphatic ang law nga na insofar as the utilization of the NSTP to augment our force insofar as DRR is concerned. In fact, one of the justifications that we had when I was talking to the mayor, we want CPU, particularly the ROTC and the NSTP, to be a force multiplier to our NDRRMO. So this is the time ngayon. Ang halinsang una, even when I was in OCD, one of the hesitations we had nga i-deploy ang aton mga NSTP kag ROTC is we are not 100% sure of their capability to be able to support. That's why we are doing this now, together with your Vice President, is to come up eventually with programs. Amo ni mga operational nga bagay, nga planuhon naton, on how to augment the training of our NSTP students and the ROTC for that matter. Because initially, what we're thinking of, we want, hopefully, kung mahimo naton, we will specialize our ROTC in the context of the civil defense aspect, and our NSTP reserve force on the other needs and requirements of response operations. Why pag ginasugilan nunan ang preparedness kag mitigation, eventually we will get there. Pero ang basics lang anay, ang fundamentals. Amo nang step by step ng ginatulok naton moving forward. And I am already highly confident na with the support of our President and to include the local communities at mga barangays natin, we will eventually get to that point. Yun lang. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Alex, for the reply and then for the assurance. We have a question sent via Slido. Let me read the question. What are alternative ways to conduct classes in extreme heat without relying on air conditioning or suspending them? Maybe Ma'am Jack, yes, Ma'am Jack, can answer that question.
So we learn from countries that have had it worse before us. India, South Asia in particular, and other countries. Japan, nagkapanaog balaan ang heat wave. Kung nakita ninyo, nagkapanaog siya, amat-amat siya panaog. So nag-agi siya sa Japan, nag-agi siya sa Taiwan. So we learn from all of these countries. Number one, there is such a thing as thermal adaptation. Thermal adaptation. The body is very intelligent. No? There is such a thing as body wisdom. Kabalo na siya, kinanglan niya mamalhas para ma-release ang heat sa lawas. Galing kay kita, kulbaan kita mabalhasan. Ambot sino na nagtudlo sa aton, nga hindi ka kinanglan pabalhasan. So, we got so used to, staying in air conditioning units that our body now cannot adapt to the heat. No? So, number one, you have a health unit here, no? May medical school ka mo. Try to unpack thermal adaptation. Second, in Japan, they have what they call warm biz, cool biz. You dress according to the weather. Dress according to the climate. Diri kaya kita sa Pilipinas nga tropical country, kadto kabla sa mall. Ang mga bayo, sa mga kabataan daw, abin mo, ara ka sa Europa, kung din ka nga naka-boots, naka-long sleeves, naka-jacket. Kita nyo na? No? Oo, naka-leather pa, naka-damo. Hindi kuya ka-inchindi sa aton, no? Kahit pa-uso, abi naton namin, tapos mareklamo ka nga nainitan ka. So in Japan, they have this law, warm biz, cool biz. In summer time, you are not allowed to lower the temperature of your air conditioning lower than 25 degrees. Di ba mera na? O lantawan yung temperatura, subong lantawa pila? 18. No? Sa ila, hindi na pwede. Kaya below, the lower the temperature, the more you are emitting, no, carbon emission. So sa ila, the more energy you're utilizing. So hindi ka pwede ka panubo sang imo nga temperature. So what will you do? Kay mainit. What will you do? Adjust the clothes. That was what the Japanese did. And the Japanese are some of the most inflexible people sometimes. But they adjusted their clothes. That's why, hindi ka, subong kung magkato ka sa Japan, rarely mo na lang sila makita nga Americana gid, no? So one time, some of our government officials went to Japan, attended a meeting, naka-Americana sila, so grabe nga pamuyayaw sa mga officials. So, kaya wala sila kabalo, no? Nga may warm biz, cool biz, nagali nga, hindi gidya pagpanubuan sa mga Hapon. In winter time, they cannot increase the temperature of their air conditioning units to higher than 16 degrees. Winter mo. So the body has to adjust. You adjust your clothing. Okay? Thirdly, retrofit the buildings. Why are our buildings so warm? Because, why? If there's no aircon here, I'm pretty sure this will be a very warm room. Why? You close all the windows. Where there's windows there, pero ginasirhan ta. No, much worse. May sana galing sagwa, ginsarhan taman kortina kag magpasigat ta suga. Yeah, you're increasing energy demand. It does not really make sense. No? So, if we are to retrofit your buildings, then try to open up some of the walls, provide windows, provide air vents, old indigenous technologies for air vents. Mga ventanillas, di ba? Heat travels upward. But you have to provide a mechanism for the air to circulate, no, the room. And that is why I told you, even if I'm not a physical scientist, dako gid ang paghinulsol ko nga waay ko namati sa physics teacher ko maayo. Because that's basic physics. That's basic physics. So, to answer your question, we need to transform. Number one. We need to, there are many ways we can do in order to adapt, no? Galing kay subong ang mga bata, tamaran na yung manguyab. Sa una kami, kapanguyab malang kami. Diba? Buligan niyo pa ang mga indigenous peoples kung nagabaligya sa mga paypay. Subong niya, waay na ya, no? Waay na kamo gadala sa handkerchief. Pamahid sa balhas, no? Kay kulbaan na sila mamalhas. Do you carry handkerchiefs? Abe, show me. Yeah. Why na, kaya ang iban, wipes na, wow, very good, ang may ara pang iban. So I hope I answered your questions. There are many ways, but thermal adaptation is one way forward.
And Ma'am Jack, I'll just segue na lang sa next question. I think you will be the right person to answer this one also. So given the solutions can we have in order to reduce our country's vulnerability to natural disasters? Daw naman ka broad, but I think you can explain.
Thesis question. No, but I love this question. You know why we have failed, no, many times. So, no, I should not say that. I should not say that. Where we were before, where we are right now in comparison to the time before RA 10121, we've gone a long way. No? We've gone a long way. In terms of the number of deaths in the Philippines due to different hazardous events, the deaths have significantly been reduced. But what we're finding out, because I came from the humanitarian sector, our losses and damages have increased in terms of assets. No? Because we're not taking care of them. No? So remember when I told you about vulnerabilities are multidimensional. My physical, my social, my human. No? We're very conscious about human vulnerabilities. But actually, we're not, we recognize vulnerabilities, but we don't address the vulnerabilities. No? Case to point, ang hambal ni Donna kagina. No? May mga communities ka nga ang naga-suffer sang losses and damages, same households. They're poor households, not necessarily uneducated perhaps, but culturally, mula na inasawaan nila pangabuin, that's a very, very big vulnerability. So, what are we doing about it? Kung ako pa mangkuton mo, hambal ni Donna, ang solusyon, hambal ni Mayor, remove them from there. That is reducing exposure. But that is not reducing vulnerability. So if I were to ask you, ano obrahon ko sa mga pamilya nga ni? Ano ay han? How do we enhance their capacities and how do we enhance their adaptive capacities and how do we enhance their coping capacities? Do you have any idea? Pasensya na kamo amugig ko na pamangkuton mo ko pamangkuton tamang ka. No? What do you think? Imol ako. Not necessarily uneducated kay base nakaskwela man ko. Galing na anda na namon nga amuning lifestyle. Anong pwede ko obrahon? Yes, sir. You educate them. Anong i-educate mo sila? Kung papiliun ta ka, what will the first thing that you will do?
I think first thing we educate them of how vulnerable they are in that situation. Then let's educate them on how ways they can do to reduce their vulnerability and possibly give them opportunities to also stay away from that situation or remove themselves from that situation, ma'am.
Very good. But my main frustration, you see, in the years that I've worked in disaster risk reduction, is the least understood concept is vulnerability. Normally, when you, challenge ko na sa inyo, attend this month, there will be many of those sessions. And you will notice people interchange exposure and vulnerability. They confuse them. Abi nila kung exposed ka, vulnerable ka na. These are two different concepts. Ano ganing sa iligay nun ang exposure? Kahayag. Kaya pwede nga hayag ka, pero hindi ka mahuyang. Do you understand that? No? Press B. Kung magwa dira, kag ang dinto si turbine mo, sir, di ba may turbine ka to? Let's say ang wind speed, butang ko lang na isa 60 km per hour, 70 km per hour. Hayag ako, pero hindi ko pagluparon. Nga bugat ko ya mo. Di ba? Bugat ko. So ang akon nga kahuyang, lain. Sang sa kay ma'am, kay si ma'am ya sexy, no? Basi ya 60, 70 km per hour, ginlupad na siya. Do you get the point? Okay? And so it's very important nga maintindihan mo anay ang imo nga kahuyang. Okay? So long answer to a short question.
Thank you for making us understand, Ma'am Jack. The last two questions I would address to Ma'am Donna. What programs has Iloilo City Government prepared to raise awareness in rural areas? And I think the last question is related to awareness, which is the role of education and awareness campaigns. What do they play in reducing the vulnerability of communities to natural disasters in the Philippines? Go ahead, Ma'am Donna.
Thank you, sir. And perhaps Admiral Pama can answer also the last question. What programs do we have now to raise awareness in rural areas? Nag-struggle ako because Iloilo City is a highly urbanized city. So kung rural areas, meaning our neighboring LGUs, but let me start lang no within our communities. As I've mentioned earlier, we have this Kabalaka program. So very strong dira ang advocacy namon on risk reduction and resilience. One of the things we've learned from Ma'am Jack as well is to understand the difference between the exposure and the vulnerability. That's why when we go to our barangays, we exert effort in explaining the basic terms and concepts. Okay, especially mga barangay leaders, if they don't understand ang HEVC, the hazard, the exposure, the vulnerabilities, it's always difficult to influence them kung ano nga activities ang obrahon sa ilang nga barangay. And it's going to very difficult to make people understand nga kung magpatawag si mayor nga mag-preemptive evacuation, why do you need to do that? All because they do not understand the basic nga information. So that's why in our Kabalaka programs, may ara na kami natawag Kabalaka sa barangay. So we have this module wherein we educate or we improve the competencies sang aton nga mga leaders sa ilang for example sa planning, and that is anchored on their basic understanding sa mga terms and concepts. Kay once maintindihan, then they can do a better nga risk analysis, knowing amuning vulnerabilities sa aton nga lugar, then what activities can we do to reduce our vulnerabilities, where can we invest our money para ang aton niya mga pumuluyo mas mag-alam, or ang aton niya kahuyang pagabot sa sunog, sa linog, mas mapaganaga naton kag ma-improve naton ang aton niya programa. So that's one ang mga sandamukmuk na Kabalaka programs. We also work with our PIO, the Public Information Office, to develop IEC materials. So if you go to our Facebook account or to the Facebook account of the city government, dira ninyo makita ang mga different mga materials. So we make that available sa social media. But we also provide that sa aton niya mga kabarangayan, most especially kaya again, as mentioned earlier, sila ang sa front line. So, like sa mga opportunities wherein we can educate them, like si Beneo, kay bago ang mga leaders, so ginapanghatag na siya nga mga information. And then, every Friday, we have what we call Kabalaka webinar. Kay it all started during the pandemic. Hindi kami makagwa, hindi makapanaw sa communities to do ang advocacy activities. So, we utilized that platform to reach out sa mas madamo nga mga sectors. So every Friday may session da on disaster preparedness, disaster prevention and mitigation, response, rehab and recovery as our way to continually educate our barangay leaders. But then again, in terms of impact, hindi kami sure no kung wala pa na muna siya na measure. But again, it's all about providing avenues para sa ila. For the last question, no, what role can education and awareness campaigns play in reducing the vulnerability sa community? Before ka mag-answer, sir. One of the major influences sa amon niya campaign is the Japanese way of teaching ang ilang mga pumuluyo. Sa disaster management, may tatlo na, sa framework nila, tatlo na ka-areas. They have the self-help na strategy, mutual help, and then the government help. The idea is that during disasters, wala ka dayong gasyagit, mayor, sir, daguhoy, help. Padali kami diri helicopter, chopper, padali kami bangka diri. Always the first step is self-help. What you know, what you can do will help you survive. That's why we've been telling our barangays, ang mga kabataan, the youth, whenever there are opportunities for you to learn about risk reduction and resilience, attend. Like this kind of gathering. Kaya nga the information shared with you by Ma'am Jack, by Sir Alex, di ba, by the city government, who knows, one day you will need that information and that information will help you survive. Di ba la? And in Japan, disaster preparedness is a way of life. So halin sa bata pa na, hasta sa tigulang, di ba? Ara na sa ila nga DNA, all because gintudlo ina sa ila, and we try to replicate that. In our Kabalaka programs, may ginatawag kaming Kabalaka Camp. It's our way of teaching children about disaster preparedness. So may Kabalaka senior man, because we also want the elderly to improve their competencies, capabilities, pag-respond during disasters. Kay vulnerable na gani sila, di ba? Kay tigulang, hindi dahil makahulag, hindi pa kabalo ko anong obrahon, all the more nga mamroblema kita. So that's why we use different kinds of tools nga available to help our people understand ang ato niya sitwasyon, to raise their awareness on disaster preparedness, risk reduction, and then resilience. Kaya nga, the more we multiply ourselves, the better. Kaya with 500,000 nga population sang Iloilo City, hindi na kaya sang 100 plus nga personnel sang CDRMO. So we need to create more opportunities for everyone to learn, so that as we multiply ourselves, mas madamo, mabuligan naton, mas madamo ang chances natin nga makasurvive when disasters hit. So thank you. Sir Alex?
Thank you so much. And so on the question about the role of education, of CPU in disaster risk management, Sir Alex would answer that for the final response. And as well, Sir Alex, I would just like also to ask that you give your final insights. You gave us the rationale of the program of what has transpired this morning. Thank you, Sir Alex. Sige po.
Before ka, sir, sa second gali nga question, one tip. Anything you do, ask yourself, is it risk enhancing or risk reducing? Amo lang gina, no? Ang sa number 2, if you want to start from where. For example, if I have something in my pocket, and then I throw it away. Dira lang, wala sa trash can. I throw it in the waterway. Ask yourself, is it risk enhancing or is it risk reducing? If I'm designing a project, a building, for example, and I plan to put it somewhere else, ask yourself, is it risk reducing or risk enhancing? Amo lang na ang imo nga pamangkot, no? Then we will be able to significantly reduce the risk sa country if we are very conscious of that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ang sa question siguro yung uli last nito, duro pamangkot ni Anonymous, no? Anyway, I think si Ma'am Donna and si Prof. Jack has already said a lot about education and awareness program. But before I answer the questions, I just would like to make a little correction, due tayo lang correction sa question gani. Number 1, gingamit niya a word nga natural disaster. Di na to? There's no such thing as a natural disaster. We have to be very, very conscious of that. disasters happen, amo itong mga gina-explikar kainan day Ma'am Donna kung day ano. There are natural hazards that creates or causes disasters. Kaya duha ka klase ang disaster eh. Disasters due to natural hazards and disasters due that are human-induced. Tao ang may ang dahilan. No? So let's be clear about that. I hope none of you will use that term again, na natural disaster. Kay sala na, we've been emphasizing that there's no such thing. Okay, ang isa pa, ang sa question kayo na, what role? Singular. Ang question dapat plural roles. Kay durogid tana, yung mahimo ka education and campaign awareness relative to reducing disaster risk leading to resilience. Hindi ko na siguro palawigon kung anong explanation kay damo na nang ginapang sugilanunan kag share sa ato ni Ma'am Jack kag ni Ma'am Donna kaina, no. I just would like to emphasize dito, siguro I think sagi ko in English kaina paghambal ko daw nadula ang pag-explicar ko ang rasyonale nga ginahimo ta ni subong. Ang bottom line na gid lang, okay ta mo nag-English na naman. Hindi ko kabalo anong bottom line sa hello. Ang rason nga ginahimo ta ini, amo to may relasyon man sa question eh. Gusto ta that we can create a critical mass, ika nga. We will create a critical mass of people who understand what is risk, kung anong ginahimo ya sini sa aton nga nahimo nga mangin kausa siya, nga damo ang nagakadisgrasya, nagdamo ang nagkalaguba every time may ara disaster. A critical mass dire sa academe. Ara na ang gobyerno, ginahimo nila damo nga bagay, parte sa pag-reduce ang disaster. Ara na ang iban ang atong mga barangay, ang atong mga iban nga stakeholders. Pero kita sa education, academe, ginatawag, isa ka dako nga instrumento nga makabulig sa ginatawag nga whole of society approach para mapanubo naton ang mga risgo nga ni nga pag-abot kung may ara man og-abot nga disaster. Now in tactical terms, no, termino lang na ang balgani kay na ni Ma'am Jack, kada bagyo, kada linog, kada hazard is unique unto its own. So every time na lang nga may matabo, sanday do na kakalaubos ang oras nila maghambal amuni. It is a product of what they call a pre-disaster risk assessment. Ginahimo na nila pirmi para kung ano man ang warning nga ihatag sa aton, na intindihan naton, kag amuman ini ang aton gamiton para sa ginatawag nga awareness, nga malesen ang risgo sa disaster. Just remember the 6 words kung ang pre-disaster risk assessment ng ginahimo, what they do. It is hazard specific. Both silingon, ano nang siyang hazard daw? Bagyo, anong klase ka bagyo? Baskog hangin o damo tubig? Tapos, ang ikaduha, area focused. Both silingon, di na siya maigo. Maskin eksakto ang imo nga pag-analisar sang hazard, kung ginhambal mo, halong ka muna sa haniway, ha? Kaya amuni matabo, igo magmura na, igo siya ari di sa uton, gili kag sa miyagaw. No, we have to be area focused kung diin ina. Gina-explikar man asang DRRMO naton. And then the last is time bound. Both silingon, ano ang mga oras nga matabo na nga pinakamataas o pinakanubo ang ginatawag naton nga risgo sa lugar nga na sa amuna nga klase ka hazard. If you can answer all these 6 words, you are now in a position based on the education that you've had, based on the understanding of the risk, nga ma-explikar naton sa ato. Diri pa lang sa CPU. We can influence each other, ti amuni manugtabo, and even we can share it with everybody and say, do amo gid ni matabo. And doing that, all of us can already more or less say, amuni himuunta. I just would like to tell a story, every time ginahambal ni Ma'am Jake kag ni Donna about Japan models. The force of the influence of people from schools and the academy is simply very, very strong. Nadumduman ninyo ang great earthquake sa 2011 sa natabo sa Japan. there was a place, and there's an incident that they call the Kamaishi Miracle. The Kamaishi Miracle is, Kamaishi is a city in Japan wherein practically nagsalbar sa mga tao sa syudad nga na mga bata. Mga bata in a sense because of their training, because of their understanding of the risk that can happen. So ang nabatyagan nila ang mga senyales nga may dako may dakong earthquake, balaan nila ang masunod dayon is a tsunami. So ang mga bata mismo sa eskwelahan nga na, grade school ni sila, gin-organize na sila dayon, kag sila ang nagmarcha, naglalalagan in a very organized way, pakadto sa ibabaw. So nakita sa mga high school, nakita sa mga tao sa komunidad, naintindihan nila kung ano ginahimo sa mga bata, nag-ulupod sila. When the tsunami hit, damo magyapon na patay. Pero out of, I think, 3,000 elementary school kids, way pa isa kagatos ang napatay. And most of those nga napatay, waay sa eskwelahan. So that's the power, the influence of understanding the risk and how you can save lives. So if that's not awareness, I don't know what it is. Again, going back sa mga ginahimo naton nga ni, eventually we would want to do that. That's just the critical mass. Eventually, maabot kita dito sa ginatawag namon, gina-insister namon termi ni President Taguhoy, we want to be a center of excellence in so far as disaster resilience is concerned. With the help of the city government, with the help of other members of the academe like Prof. Jack, and with the help of our partners ang ginatawag ko, sa mga barangay, there is nothing that we cannot do in terms of disaster resilience. So let this today be our first step going towards that direction, that CPU will be the vanguard in so far as disaster resilience in Iloilo City, aside from the government. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Sir Alex. And that ends our open forum. We still have a question, but I suggest you can send that to the Office of the Vice President for Administration since we have time constraints and so we have to end our open forum. And so thank you for those anonymous people who sent the questions. And so once again, thank you to our resource persons, Sir Alexander Pama, Ma'am Jessica Dator Bersilia, Ma'am Donna Magno, and of course, Sir Danny C. Molina. And so this time, we will award our certificates and our tokens of appreciation to our guest lecturers. So may I call on stage Dr. Ernest Howard B. Dagohoy, also Sir Alexander Pama, Admiral Alexander Pama, Honorable Matt P. Palabrica, and Attorney Doridel Lusanes for the awarding of our certificates. So we have Dr. Ernest Dagohoy, Admiral Alexander Pama, and a member of our Board of Trustees, Honorable Matt P. Palabrica, and Attorney Joridel Lusanes to award and assist in the giving of our certificates and tokens of appreciation. And so let me read the text of our certificate. Central Philippine University, Iloilo City, Philippines presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Jessica Dador Bersilia for sharing her time, effort, and expertise that contributed to the successful holding of the lecture workshop for a disaster resilient university and community held on July 22, 2024 at the Educational Media Center, Central Philippine University. Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew chapter 5 verse 16. Given this 22nd day of July 2024 at Central Philippine University, Haro, Iloilo City, signed by the President of Central Philippine University, Dr. Ernest Howard Bidagohoy, and the chairman of the Sustainability and Resilience Committee and member of the CPU Board of Trustees, Vice Admiral Alexander P. Pama. Or maybe we can position Doc Check sa tunga, ara, para mabalanse natin. Sa And so once again, madamo gid nga salamat kay Ma'am Jessica Dator Bersilia. And the same certificate of appreciation is being given to the Iloilo City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council through Ms. Donna P. Magno. Sa liwat, madamo gid nga salamat kay Ma'am Donna P. Magno. Say 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you. And so we again thank our guest lecturers and speakers as we come to end part 1, the lecture part of our program this morning. And please stay for part 2, the quick workshop of our program. And to finally give the closing remarks, we have the Vice Chairman of the Sustainability and Resilience Committee and member of the CPU Board of Trustees, the Sangguniang Panlalawigan member of the 3rd District of the Province of Iloilo, Honorable Matpi Palabrica.
Okay, mayong udto sa tanan. First and foremost, we would like to thank our President, Dr. Ernest Howard Dagohoy. Palakpakan naton. Kag sa pariente namon sa San Enrique, kag Pasig, Vice Admiral Alexander Pama, the Chairman of the Resilience and Sustainability Committee, and also to our member, Attorney Losanyes, to our speaker, Ma'am Jessica Bersilia and Ma'am Donna Magno. Palakpakan nato na aton duha ka speakers. A learning experience for me and to all of us. For Engineer Molina, we also have the Vice President for Finance. We have Dr. Florence Bogassia ato sa likod. I'm fond of reading a book of Sun Tzu. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without disaster. So that is what I've learned today, knowing that the chair of our committee at the CPU board is a PMA class of 1979, a flag Navy officer of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And just give a short reflection. That disaster, I was once a mayor of the municipality of Bingawan, and an eye-opener for me, that disaster is a failure in governance. We are also hardly hit by Super Typhoon Yolanda. I was the mayor at that time. And before, I really do not believe in resilience and preparation. So as I go along, it is a learning process for me. And our objective for our convocation today is to save lives and assets. Thank you very much, ma'am. Ang risk gali is a combination of hazard, exposure, vulnerability, nabigid combination sang katalagman, sang kahayag, sang kahuyang, no? So, as the closing message of Vice Admiral Pama, 6 words for the pre-disaster assessment. Hazard specific, area focus, time bound. Damo na tunan ko. And our CPU president has committed that CPU will be a force multiplier in terms of resilience and preparation. And it is our direction of the Central Philippine University. And again, I will quote General Pama, that this convocation today, that we should produce a critical mass of people in the academe that can understand on how to reduce hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. That is why we are here today. So this is not an eye-opener only, but this is a challenge to all of us. That CPU will be a force multiplier of the community that is surrounding the university. That CPU will always be prepared. That CPU will be in a vanguard, a front line of what will be Philippines, specifically Central Panay, today and the future. So thank you very much to our university president and to our chairman of the committee, and also to our resource speakers and to each and everyone for conducting this very noble initiative for the first time, I think, in the whole Visayas, I don't know, nga nag-conduct ang isa ka university, isang amuini, nga activity. And also we would like to thank the city government led by Mayor Treñas and Ma'am Donna Magno. Palakpakan naton. Thank you very much. If not of you people that I mentioned, and even all the participants, this will not be a successful activity. So to God be the glory. God bless you. Mabuhay ang CPU.
Thank you so much, Honorable Matt P. Palabrica. This time, we will request our guest lecturers, as well as our speakers, and then Dr. Dagohoy, and Honorable Matt Palabrica, and Attorney Doridel Lusanias for the group photo opportunity here on stage. So, Ma'am Jack, and then Ma'am Donna, and VP Dan as well, and of course, and VP for Finance and Enterprises, Ma'am Poy, ari diri ka come join sa aton diri nga group photo. And then audience, stay put, kay karon manaog na sila, tapos picturean naman kag kamo dira ara sa audience. Okay, on my cue. Okay, wala pa. Ginatest pa anay ni Sir Simon. Kay para perfect gid. One, two, three, smile. Another wacky pose. 1, 2, 3. Yes, thank you. And then, may I request the group to please come down. And then, diri ka naman, Sir Sai, sa ibabaw. Sila dira sa idalom para ang audience naman maara sa likod. So, kamo dira adjust para masulod kamo sa view sa aton nga camera. May I request ang aton nga grupo. Tapos dira lang kamo tindog sa tubang, ang audience naman, pwede kamo ka-compress para masulod dira. Yes, pwede naka-compress para makita tanan sa likod sang aton nga mga guests. Na dira, sige. Kag dira ka Sir Sai sa ibabaw. Tindog lang, sir. para dira sa likod. Ang iban adjust para malusot ka mo sa camera. Okay. Kuha ang sa likod to Sir Sai. Okay, very good. Sige, one last photo sang aton. Sige, ready na tanan? Okay, serious anay on ang first nga picture and then may waki kita karon. And so, thank you everyone. And please remain. We still have our part 2, which is a very quick workshop lang gid. Okay. So I was informed that we will no longer do the workshop, but we will schedule it for another day para nga damo gid kita may ma-learn. And so this time, we will just arrange our stage here for our press conference. So may quick man kita nga press conference. So i-arrange na natin diri sa ibabaw. And for our press conference, that will be facilitated by Attorney Doridel